Being 9 o'clock, call the meeting to order, pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic which stands one nation. Have an appointment on 9:05, and we do a little bit of stuff at the beginning here. Approval of the agenda, we would like to add in action item.
Yes, so Ted does have one addition to the consent agenda, and it's for the sheriff's office. It temporarily changed the employment status of Ben Novak, sheriff's deputy, from 0.55 FTE to 0.8 FTE, effective 7/16 of 2023 through 12/30 of 2023, after which Deputy Novak's employment status will revert to 0.55 FTE.
Okay. Some of that has to do to try and minimize overtime in the department. But that's two changes going on.
At our personnel meeting last Thursday, that didn't get brought up.
Came up Friday, I guess, and I got a call.
You got a call from,
Tess asking if we put it on the agenda, because it was too late. But Dean and the sheriff have asked if we do that. To try and minimize overtime, because it's Bob and I were at the meeting last week with, or 2 weeks ago with the sheriff and he was gone. I'd like to add that to the consent agenda. That amendment, any other discussion on the agenda?
I'll make a motion to accept the consent.
This was approved the agenda
The general,
in general,
just general again.
generally,
with that only one amendment. Okay, is there a second
Second.
discussion? All in favor, say aye. All opposed, say nay. Carried. Minutes of the previous meeting, the 27th of June, submitted to us. Any discussion?
so move.
You have a second
Second.
discussion? Being none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Carried. Next would be public comment. At this point, we open up the public comment. Anybody wish to address the board for public comment? Being none, moving on to a couple more minutes. Next thing on the agenda will be the consent agenda. Have the resignation of Heidi Lapham. We have search for 0.5 auditor treasurer. We have amend the resignation of Amy Gerke from 23rd to 15th, and then they added on Novak's 0.55 to 0.8. Entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
With the addition. Is there a second? I'll second it. Discussion.
So the deputy situation, it's just for a couple of weeks until they get somebody.
It'll probably go until this fall or maybe even the end of the year because of some retirements,
I thought there was a limit on how long this was gonna be from.
It says through 12/30 of 2023.
could be as far up as up to. That's how I received it. Okay, any further discussion? Being none, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Okay, 4-1. Good time, it's close enough to 9:05, so we'll go to our appointment. We have a Houston County Child Care Enhancement proposal with ARPA asking for focusing on areas of outreach, training, enhancement, facility support, and provider onboarding track. Presented by the EDA group, Houston County Public Health and Business Services, and WPI. We have somebody from
Yes.
Zoom, and we have two here in the hall. Go ahead.
So whose number is that bottom?
The 7951 number.
Not sure who that is, but
That is me. That's Ginny Rittman. I'm on the phone as well as Zoom just to make sure I have enough service.
okay.
Very good, thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Jenny.
All right, go ahead.
Okay, good morning, commissioners. We are, John and I, along with WDI, who John will be introducing in just a couple of minutes here. We are very excited to be before you this morning, finally, with our official childcare ARPA ask. I know we've got a very busy agenda today and we have a lot to get through, so we're going to run through this really quickly. We're going to try to be brief, but definitely ask questions at the end. Because this is, if you have any, because this is really important and we want to make sure that this important topic gets the time it deserves. I'm just going to give a little brief history for you all in the press, just as a reminder. So ever since Houston County was awarded ARPA dollars, childcare was something that was specifically listed in ARPA as an eligible use of funds. And something that would be a good use of those funds. So from the very beginning, we've all been talking about potentially using some ARPA dollars to help address childcare needs in Houston County. But before doing that, we really wanted to make sure that we had a really good, set solid plan and we knew exactly what we were going to do with those dollars and how we were going to make the best use of them. So the Houston County EDA connected with Public Health and Human Services, and we applied to a grant. We were awarded an award valued at $42,000, and through that we have been working for the past year with First Children's Finance. So that's what this little handout is at your desk. And I guess the biggest takeaways for me in working with First Children's Finance, they are a nonprofit. They work with small communities throughout the state of Minnesota, and they also communicate with the state. The biggest takeaway from their specific research in Houston County is that unfortunately we are short 206 slots in just the 0 to 5 age group in Houston County. And we also realized that the lack of childcare is having a very negative impact on our economic development and businesses in our community. So investing in childcare not only will help our families and our parents and our kids, but it's also going to help our employers and our community overall, because those of us who live in the county, we shop at stores, we use goods and services from Houston County all the time. So we'll just really improve, investing in this will improve the quality of life for everyone involved. So through First Children's Finance, we also created a core team. John and Karen from Public Health and Human Services, our licensor, myself, Commissioner Burns, along with people who represent the schools. We have parents, grandparents, business leaders, people from workforce development. We have all been working on a core team, and I'm not going to go through this in its entirety, but at the very back, we have some SMART goals, and the proposal this morning is part of that. We have identified WDI as a great partner and an organization that can really see this through. EDA works very closely with them on other initiatives. And so we see them as a good partner and a good place to house the money for furthering these things. I'm almost done, but I'm just going to read really quickly from page 5, just a couple highlights from the First Children's Finance report. And then I'm going to turn it over to John to talk specifically about what we plan to do with the ARPA money through WDI. So on page 5, it says, to understand the potential need for childcare in Houston County, First Children's Finance conducted a supply and demand gap analysis and community surveys, which showed a childcare shortage of approximately 206 slots. The analysis also revealed that the childcare shortage had severely impacted parents living in Houston County. 32% of parent survey respondents declined employment or withdrew from the workforce due to childcare issues, and 39% care impacted their ability to attract and retain employees. Additionally, 17% of employers said the childcare shortage has impacted their ability to retain employees. Absence from work when a provider is closed for the day, inability to work a flexible schedule, inability to work different shifts, and tardiness to work hinders the ability of parents to advance their careers and the ability of employers to meet their business needs. So now I'm going to turn it over to John for the specifics of what we are asking for the money for.
So
accessible and affordable childcare isn't a problem that's unique to Houston County. It's probably not unique to the state of Minnesota. I think it's more pronounced in rural areas where there's less available childcare options. We're excited to bring forward a proposal from WDI and working on some of our goals with this group. You know, we went through SMART goals and everything, but really a bottom line for us is we're trying to do anything we can think of to both support and retain existing providers as well as grow new providers. The number of 206 slots for 0 to 5 is a real number. And that's you know, a lot of families that are having to make hard choices as to how they're going to balance work, supporting their family, and caring for their children. And it has, as Allison has put very well, a pretty significant impact on our business community. So in working with WDI, they've worked with a number of these types of programs in the past. I'm going to introduce now Ginny Rittman. She's the executive director of WDI, and Kyle Mullen. They've been working with us on this proposal. There's Ginny and there's Kyle. I get the privilege of working with them regularly as I serve on their board. So I've been involved with a lot of things that WDI does. They were an obvious choice for us to think of a way to kind of combine a number of these different initiatives. Briefly, there's kind of 3 buckets for this proposal, funding proposal from ARPA. One is outreach and research. That's where you would find some of the recruitment for new providers, marketing for the development of new providers, inclusion of this type of career path in career fairs and different things like that. The importance of childcare startup assistance. One of the things that we've come up with in this team is, as we visited with a bunch of existing providers, is there's obviously the childcare things that you need to know and be good at and love, but you also have to run a small business. And so those business entrepreneurial things, that's what that part is intended for. And then emerging models, some of these things we're seeing in other communities where there's a pod where multiple home childcares can be combining their efforts in one site. We want to do more research in that area. Second bucket is training. That's both training existing providers, and we've kind of dabbled our toes into that with a little bit of ARPA funding and supporting some training, but we really want to work hard on that. And WDI is known for work that they've done with incumbent workforce members. And another big part of that is a proposal that we will be submitting to BEAD for Pathways to Prosperity, or a pathway specific to childcare careers. Lastly, facilities support. Our office does the licensing for childcares in Houston County. And sometimes we're not particularly popular. The things that we have to ask people to do to meet the requirements that the state gives us are sometimes pretty arduous and can be expensive for a home provider to be able to achieve. Changes that need to happen to their house for safety concerns or a variety of things. This is a pool of funds that can help assist those people as they're just getting started, or existing providers as they're working to maintain their licensure. The bottom line with this is we've been really pleased with a cross-sector team to develop goals to move forward with this and hopefully make Houston County a slightly better and more conducive to building and sustaining childcare and have a corresponding impact on economic development. Again, 206 slots. I think to me, another telling thing is, nearly 40% of our employers are saying that childcare has an impact on their ability to attract and retain employees. In moving forward with this proposal, Houston County would really be a leader in the region. We're working obviously with WDI. They work in, Ginny, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think at least 10 communities in Southeast Minnesota. And they're looking to this work to also learn so that we can replicate that in other places. Last thing I'm going to mention, and then turn it over to Ginny and Kyle if they have anything they want to add, is our intention isn't just to take the resources, do the stuff. We want to come back to the board, come back to this, the core group of leaders in Houston County and talk about what we're learning and report back and the things that we learn, the successes that we experience, and because our bottom line deliverable is, are we able to close that gap of 206 slots? Are we able to sustain the providers that we have, support them, and are we able to grow new providers? Ginny, do you want to add anything?
Sure, I'm happy to. My name is Ginny Rittman. I'm the Executive Director with Workforce Development, Inc. So thank you for having us here this morning, board members. And yeah, I really like as a sustainability partner. I think that, we have some provide value on and bring to the table. We have about $11 million budget for as a whole across a 10-county area. And so the other thing that we can bring also to the partnership is, some of the other best practices and frankly, funding streams that are across the region. We have 83 different funding. Being able to braid some of those different funding streams to really provide regional effort, but then using those, some of those best practices and what we've learned to really hone in on what's best for Houston County. And so a lot of that legwork has been done with your folks there and the great network that's been created. And so what we hope to provide value on is to build that sustainability. John mentioned, we're planning on securing some other funding streams to support this work. And, the goal is that we'll work ourselves out of the need for the funding over the next few years, and then also hit that target goal of getting those childcare providers to the area. So we do have employers that we work with in the county. A lot of the career seekers in the county come through our office, so we're able to provide those supports for those folks. We have a connection to the regional entrepreneurship group as well, so to help those individuals that are going down that track of in-home childcare provider. We have a pretty robust network and a pretty robust ability to provide some sustainability efforts for the project going forward as well.
All right. I don't know, Kyle, do you have anything you want to add?
I just wanted to toss out that kind of confirming a few things Allison and John have mentioned. Childcare is a serious concern. The pressures can be intensified in rural areas where the in-home providers are often the higher priorities, and when in many regions, including Houston County, we're looking at the majority of the current in-home providers are within 5 years or less of retirement. Getting ahead of this now is very crucial. I'm an area manager out in the Goodhue Wabasha counties, but one of my other duties as assigned was assisting in researching childcare efforts and programs and pulling together all the different resources at play. While the childcare pressure is not a Houston County only thing, it's a Minnesota-wide thing. One thing that is unique to Houston County is, of the core teams I've come across, Houston County has the best team assembled with the widest variety of skills, the best variety of experience, and they would be the ones providing the oversight to the proposal we have here. If you give this group that you guys have already assembled these resources, I think you'll be pretty impressed by what they can achieve. And I'm very hopeful that it would also provide a template for the rest of the state to follow suit.
Right. Anything else?
Question?
I see here the action would be requesting $255,000 for a 3-year project. What was set aside in the ARPA deal here? I don't have my green sheet in front of me. It was
300.
And what we use already, the 8.
I think 8,000.
Yeah, so I did want to make a comment on the 8,000. You allocated $8,000 this year to 2 trainings, but we found that most who needed the training took the training the first time around. So we'd like to roll that 8,000 into next year because we are not even near that mark. So we'll use that for trainings in Houston County, but we are asking for an addition next year, and we are asking for an additional $255,000 out of ARPA. The check would be cut directly to WDI. and we will work with them to further this.
And this is all for Houston County.
All of the 255,000 will be used directly in Houston County. That is just for Houston County, correct?
That's a good point, and something that we've been clear with, when you work with a regional partner, I think there's both the advantage in getting kind of capacity, but we were clear in talking with WDI that these are Houston County ARPA dollars and they need to be focused on Houston County effort. That being said, I think Kyle said it real well. I think we will be a leader in this area and provide kind of a roadmap or a template for how to do this work in other places that WDI will likely be doing in other counties as well.
That's what I.
Yeah.
We're actually gonna try to do something.
Yeah.
And I'm impressed with what you guys have done. You've done your homework. You've outlined the problems that are out there. There's some you can't fix, like regulation. We hear that all the time on that stuff. But, you guys have done a lot of work on this. I know, Bob, you were on that too, and Joe. But yeah, I'm impressed.
Are there any funds, grants to help? As this goes, we're looking at 255 for 3 years. As we know, things go up. Are there available grants in place?
Yes, so we're looking at potential leveraged funding. It's on the last page of your handout. Totaling around $130,000. So we already have other funding streams in the works.
The last page of the.
I think that's with regard to funding streams that we've already identified. We are going to be aggressive in marketing our work here so that we can attract additional resources to this project. And, when you sit in front of a board like this, I don't want to overpromise and underdeliver. I think the things that we identified as potential leverage are pretty high probability. But we will aggressively look for additional resources as we move forward. Anytime you've got a great big amount of money like this, we've got to think about how do we sustain these efforts in year 4. And so we will have an eye to that from the very beginning.
And also, like Ginny said, if we can close the gap, we won't need as much additional funding, hopefully in the future.
The slots.
Right.
So in order to do that, we're gonna have to have new startups.
Absolutely.
Not?
Yes,
I mean,
yes,
that's gonna be a main focus here. The main goal is to encourage new startups.
exactly.
And so, I hopefully that, through that pod thing, which is interesting.
Mhm.
Do you want to dwell on that a little bit as far as?
The idea of the pod system is it gives another opportunity or an option for home childcare providers where they can have one site and then you'd have multiple individual business or individual providers out of that site. Some of what that does is it balances some of the cost associated with the site and licensing. It also has been shown to help with some coverage of different kinds of things. So a lot of times providers, their census goes up and down, and what they're licensed for is based on age and the families they're working with. Obviously, their kids are getting older, then there's new kids. And so wanting to work with those families and having a degree of flexibility for when there's spikes and things like that. That's some of what we've seen in the initial research on pods. It's interesting. I think we need to find providers who are interested in doing that. As part of the work that we're doing, in addition to this with this team, we're also looking at sites that would be potential places for that. I think you can speak to that more, Allison.
Yeah, so that's my subcommittee, and we do have a list from a few of the local realtors of just available commercial space in Houston County that could potentially be used for that. And yes, we're definitely going to need new providers to get into the industry. We also have some current providers that could potentially expand the amount of slots that they have, but they maybe need, some help remodeling or doing something to their current facility or recruiting help, a variety of things. But so we'll be working on both ends to create slots, both with existing and new providers. And the pod model is just one area to explore. But sometimes that's a great model because sometimes someone's home might not work. But that commercial space may, so.
Another thing we have touched on a lot is center-based care, and we'll be working with those providers as well. Often they're looking for qualified staff, and so work with this Pathway to Prosperities project is not just bringing people into the home childcare industry, but also the center-based childcare industry. And so those providers that are center-based report that it's really difficult to find the staff that they need to be able to, maybe their license for their space will allow them this many kids, but they don't have the staffing necessary to support that.
Well, you have to have staff to support the
Right.
number of like
Right.
Exactly.
babies or 0 to 5.
Right.
What is that ratio? Do you know?
I don't know it right offhand.
It depends on the square footage and the size of the
Oh,
facility.
that goes into play
Yes,
too.
yeah.
Okay.
That one word seems to pop up in the workforce and in our discussion now, staffing. People are not working or less apt to work for a certain amount. They need to have more money, whatever. Costs of getting people into the work is going up.
And in Houston County, truly, we have more openings than we have workers. So attracting workforce and this plays into some other initiatives we work on, like the Bluff Country Collaborative, getting our youth to stay in the area and wanting to work here. That's all a part of this too.
Yeah, a lot of Pathways to Prosperity projects that you see in manufacturing and healthcare, things like that. It's starting way into schools to say these are potential careers that maybe you haven't thought about, and visiting with people who are providing those types of services or in those kinds of careers to get interest at that point as those pathways are being developed. So it's a long-term strategy, but it's been really successful with other pathway projects WDI has been involved in.
Any other question or comment? Or presentation? It'd be one of our action items.
The first action item, so.
Anything from Jenny or Kyle? Ed?
I just wanted to reemphasize the point they made about seeking other sources of funding. All this 255 that's asked for would remain in Houston County, but we are also working on a state grant is the one that was referenced in there for some of the early childhood training. Just this week, there's an opportunity for Department of Labor grant that we're also going to take a swing at that would offer some regional funding. So all those other leverage funds that would be coming in for the 255 would be staying in Houston County. So.
Excuse me, and I would just add that I think, everything that you've said is spot on. We know that there's just simply not enough bodies right now in our entire region or state to fill the openings that are available. But this project specifically is unique in that it's really turning over every stone. We're doing a multi-prong approach, talking with K-12 all the way up to, talking with existing providers and addressing their needs so they stay in business. And so I think that's what's unique and hopefully going to be successful about this project is that we're kind of turning over every stone and making a multi-prong approach out of it, and also utilizing best practices that are happening. And I just want to add, it's just a really good time too to be at the forefront of this. That there's state dollars coming out the pike to address childcare shortages. We don't know what those are all going to look like yet, but it's just a really good time to really take a step forward in this and be a leader, as Houston County. And because your group there has done so much of the legwork and background, you're so much farther ahead than a lot of the other counties that are just starting to talk about, okay, now it might be time to do something with childcare challenges. Houston County is, light years ahead of that. So it's just really good timing. Your county's done a lot of work already, and it's a multi-prong approach that's really, really making sure that we're addressing it from multiple angles.
I want to thank John and his staff and Allison and your work with EDA on this. So you guys have done a lot of work and getting this all prepared. So
Thank you all.
and you.
Good information. Okay, not anything else? Or the appointment, I guess I'm gonna move on to our action items. Thank you.
And we're first up.
Yeah.
For sure.
That's why.
Just, I was listening to the news this morning, La Crosse County is also doing the same thing, looking at some of our programs coming through their county for too, so, but we're on the cusp of doing something good. So action item number one, discuss and possibly approve ARPA fund distribution, including possibility of using ARPA funds for a Houston County Child Care Enhancement Proposal. This is this is out of our ARPA funds. It'll be a period of 3 years. Distributing.
Well, we just cut one check for $255,000. It would be used for 3 years, because ARPA needs to be used by.
I'll make a motion to approve Houston County Child Care Enhancement Proposal. Second.
Further discussion?
I think it's very good use of our ARPA dollars. So. Fully supported.
Thank you. Being no further discussion, all in favor say aye. Opposed say nay. Carried.
Thank you.
Number two, consider approval to enter into an application / contract with pollinator and brush management project for Sheldon Township. In Sheldon Township at the park. Yes.
Yeah, that's
Morning.
me. Morning. I'm Dan with the Root River Soil and Water Conservation District. And I do have a thumb drive for a PowerPoint, but there's probably no place for that. Looks like.
It can be uploaded here, but normally we have IT get it ready.
Okay, yeah,
So
we'll do it the old way then.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, we had a lot of stuff in the packet there.
Did Janice send you one?
yes,
Okay.
All
Good.
Yeah, there's pages and pages.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I do a lot of paperwork, but yeah, we'll kind of go through it then.
What page are you starting on?
Okay. I'll kind of hold up some stuff as I go here. So, yeah, I wrote a grant, from the state for planting, pollinator habitat, so native grasses and forbs. Yeah.
So first off, how did we get started on this? How did all this come into play? Were you came in there and wrote a grant for it? Did somebody approach you or?
No, it was just, budget was getting a little tight, so I started writing grants.
Okay.
And,
Research
Yeah.
any type of.
I mean, specifically for the Botcher Park. Here, I mean, how did that get?
it was written in the grant language. They want these pollinator patches and like
Okay.
protected lands, so
Okay.
parks or easements. So, and they had some priority areas, kind of follows where they've found the rusty patch bumblebee, which is an endangered bee. So kind of in the northern half of the county was kind of their priority area. So I scoped out any public parks and
Okay.
a lot of rim easements,
Yeah.
Reinvest in Minnesota, private easements. And any of those that were in this priority area were going to be our focus areas. So I wrote that in the grant, and then I was just reaching out to people on our outreach list and seeing who's all interested in it. So yeah, that's how this kind of came to be. And we walked Botcher Park, and there were some photos down in the bottom. There's a few patches of meadow, and it's not in bad shape. That's a lot of brome grass, which isn't a native grass. It's really good at stopping erosion, but not the best for nectar sources or nesting sources for bees and butterflies. And then there's some young box elder trees, a couple native flowers, but it could be a lot better habitat for pollinators. So yeah, this grant, we have a little bit of cost share money for turning that into pollinator habitat. Kind of go through the packet. This map here, you can see there's like 4 different patches of meadow there. It's not a lot, just 1.7 acres. And a little bit of brush management, which is what our practice for getting rid of invasive buckthorn, honeysuckle. In this case, some little box elder trees that are encroaching on the meadow. And there's a fair amount of honeysuckle too. So yeah, 1.7 acres of pollinator planting, 1 acre of brush management. And we're following the NRCS standards for planting this pollinator habitat. So part of that is 100-foot setback from any adjacent cropland. That's just in case you're spraying insecticide. Don't want to attract a bunch of bees to one spot, then have them get wiped out. So there's a little bit of setback there. There's one spot kind of by the parking lot. We won't be able to plant all these forbs, but all these other places we will.
Do you bring in bees or transplant some to get the start or just kind of?
No, yep, this would just be planting the forbs and grasses. There's a goat prairie up on top. We were thinking about maybe trying something up there, but we kind of decided not to pursue that because getting any sort of equipment up there and we could burn it, but then there's a lot of property lines
You could get
there.
goats.
Yeah,
Could get goats.
right. Yeah.
They're around.
Yeah. I don't know how you'd fence them in up there, but you could, I imagine.
They provide the fencing, you have to pay for it.
Right. So we could add that on here if you want. Might be,
No.
it wouldn't be much money. The way they,
It's $500 an acre. I looked into it.
through who?
Well, it was actually at that Meyer out at the dairy on the farm, the breakfast on the farm.
Oh, they charge you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they charge you $500 an acre to bring in their goats to clean it up. And that covers the fencing and everything, I believe.
Sure. Yeah, through this grant, you'd only get, like $50. Yeah, so probably not worth it. Unless you want to on your own dime. But yeah, they wanted me to focus it more on planting the pollinator patches, so there's a little more caution on that. Which still isn't too much, but let's see, going through the packet, it's just a lot of technical jargon. There's a template they make us use that we have to go off of, but figured we focus on monarch butterflies and that rusty patch bumblebee. So I want a seed mix that has this blazing star, wild bergamot, and milkweeds, which are favorite food sources of those bugs. Got a buffer. We'll probably broadcast seed it since it's such a small area.
When you broadcast seed, you gotta clear it first and then broadcast.
Yep. So kind of the seeding guide here I made up. It's kind of the rough guide on how we do it. You have your drilled rate if you're drilling, then if you're broadcasting, you plant 150% of the drilled rate because it's not as good as seed to soil contact. Birds could eat some. But there's also all this brome grass, which is pretty aggressive compared to these native grasses and forbs. So, I suggest you plant 2 times the drilled rate, but for sure plant 1.5 times the drilled rate. But anyway, you could plant this in the fall or in the spring. The fall seems to favor the wildflowers more, since that's kind of our focus. I would suggest a fall planting. It's either after November 1st or anytime once the soil temps are consistently below 50 degrees. So might not be that late, but yeah, it takes a little bit of site prep. So a rough timeline, mid-July, mow the area down as short as you can. Get rid of all that brush that's in the area or along the edge. You mow it short, let the grass come up, about a foot and a half or so. Then you'd spray it with herbicide. So kind of stress it twice. Probably just spray it with Roundup. Once it's dead, You'd probably want to till the area, maybe in mid-August, just to prepare the seed bed. As you guys know, sometimes you get a flush of weeds when you till like that, so wait and see if you got to spray it a second time, you might have to. Then, if it's Roundup, it's a short half-life, if you wait 10 days, you should be able to plant. So then around November, broadcast seed it. Usually if you're broadcasting it, you'd mix some cracked corn or sawdust in with it. So a lot of these seeds are so tiny, it helps carry the little seeds. And you can see where you planted and haven't planted. Then try to incorporate it either with a roller or a drag or something, just to get that good seed to soil contact. So that'd be year one. The natives take a while to get established. The first year, they're just growing their roots. So the first year, you're gonna have weeds in there, so you'd have to mow it 6 to 8 inches tall, 2 to 3 times that first summer, just to make sure those weeds don't seed out. Then in year 3, you might have to mow it one more time, or maybe spot spray weeds or pull weeds, but midway through year 3, the natives should be in full swing. And then they pretty much take care of themselves. Just we'll come back every 2 years and do a spot check. And if there's a patch of thistles in a corner or something, we'll say, hey, either mow or spray those. But yeah, it should be pretty maintenance free after that. So. And then part of it.
Your grant is for the initial prep and seeding.
Yep.
Your
Yep.
responsibility is gonna be to take care of the mowing every year. For a couple of years as far as marking it down.
Yep. For the first.
Keeping the grass.
Yep.
I thought that was the Parks Committee.
Good.
Oh.
I'm not on the parks committee.
Yeah, I think Brian's guys would do all that. But
So Brian's staff is gonna do all the work on this.
yeah, I went over it. I met him on site a couple months ago and went over this process with a couple of his guys.
Right?
Yeah, I might as well just come in here since I've been talking to Dan and Dave about this quite a bit. The grant basically covers the cost of the material for the seeding and the spraying. All the staff time, the labor time, the equipment time, essentially would not be covered by the grant costs. The dollar amounts basically what it would be for anyone else is donating their time to install this type of habitat. So with volunteered labor. So the grant doesn't cover that. Couple things though to add on top of that when we talk about the bumblebees and monarch butterflies and stuff, is that because of the endangered and threatened species lists at the federal level, there's not regulations in place that's forcing us to plant pollinator habitat and to do studies and to not spray different areas and to manage stuff. But that is coming. There's actually some programs in place now where counties are signing up for where they are volunteering to not maintain generally 5% of their road right away, and to go out there and count milkweed, how many milkweeds you have per 100 square feet in different areas in there right away. So there's stuff coming that could force the county into planting and maintaining habitats. So that's within the right of way. So this isn't within the right of way, but it might qualify for that in the future. So it does kind of put us at the forefront on some of the stuff that we might be forced to do in the future anyway. So even though the grant's not covering all of our costs with this, there is some other benefit that might come back and help us out in the future. So do we have staff time to go and focus on this rather than other stuff? No, we don't have extra staff that is specifically dedicated to maintaining stuff in Wildcat Parks. We're gonna need to pull staff away from replacing culverts and maintaining ditches and stuff. So we just need to shuffle around what we're doing. But we can definitely find the staff to do it. It's just not something we were planning on when we entered this year. So
Yeah, and it's only $1,065, but and it's that that's the cap. So we're supposed to do a cost estimate based on numbers we're getting from the state. And you get it planted, hand in all your bills and receipts, you know, this many man hours at this rate. And we add up all the eligible expenses, and it's 75% of that, or a cost estimate, whatever is lower is what we pay. So I had my cost estimate, 75% of that was $1,065. So that's kind of like the max payment we'd get, maybe less if the bills come in way less than what I thought. So ain't much, pretty small project, but you know, it's a good site for one. And I don't think I mentioned, so it has to be maintained for 10 years. It's part of the rules of the grant. And then
So if it doesn't catch, then. Gotta
we
do it
won't
over.
make you,
Huh?
we won't make it spend a bunch more money to
Okay.
reseed it. Hopefully you would, but you wouldn't have to.
How do you maintain something for 10 years if
If it doesn't catch,
You maintain enough.
yeah,
I mean,
let the brome come back and it's back to where it was. There'd probably be a few more weeds than what's there now, you know?
it's a big cost. From the highway department, as far as this project is concerned.
No. I mean, it's ours, so some of it as far as how much is gonna need to be mowed and sprayed, it's all gonna depend on, you know, what comes up with the weeds and what we're trying to, you know. That's tough to estimate how many weeds are gonna come through and what we're gonna be doing out there in the future years, so. It's not gonna be a ton of hours up front. But it definitely does, divert one or two people over, here and there a few times, this fall and next summer.
In the summer. If there's 2 years of mowing, knocking it down.
Mowing in year one and
Yeah,
then in year
Mow it
three.
once, spray it, maybe spray it again, plant it, so that's year one. And then mow it 2 or 3 times in year two. Maybe once in year three. And then, as I was gonna say, midway through this 10-year contract, we want you to mow it one more time. Just to keep the trees from encroaching, so.
And for mowing, what we hope to do is when we're down there mowing the roadside, get that tractor up into these open areas and spray that or mow with that same tractor, so you're not driving down there just to mow and drag it back, so.
So
If we don't do anything, then what? What are we doing now with those patches, those identified areas? They're just weeds.
Right now,
it's
we're not doing
brome
anything,
grass.
they're just,
Yeah, it's brome grass and white cockle, some box elder. Couple of wild bergamot flowers.
So that 1.7, is that on all the parcels or just one of those
That's all of them combined.
combined?
Yep.
So all the open areas, so you could get mowed with a tractor, not a bobcat, or?
I think the vast majority of it could be mowed with the tractor. We might need to bring the Bobcat down there once or twice, but it shouldn't be much once we get everything cleaned up initially.
Well, it's a good. The pollinator thing is a good deal, I get that. But Botcher Park was supposed to be a low-key. Self-sustaining park. And it's gotten to be, it's getting to be a little more than that. Getting more involved in spending money out there. I mean, it's supposed to be a walking trail. I mean, do we want a lot of bees in our walking trails? I don't know. It's just getting little, in my point of view, a little out of hand as far as what we're investing in that park. It's supposed to have been it's supposed to have been a place for public hunting, but that's changed to a park and a walking trails and stuff. Now we're gonna have a pollinator habitat, so I don't know.
We did a lot of work last year, didn't we, with the walking trails and stuff?
Yep.
And cleaning up track, there's still some more tires and stuff around there.
Yeah, so most of the walking trails were done with volunteer labor, Boy Scouts stuff. We've done a little bit with our highway staff for spraying down some weeds. This spring we were out there, we did some cleanup of the garbage, so there's been old farm dumps or scrap metal and stuff in there. We got that all cleaned out this spring. In the process of getting equipment out, we kind of created another trail that can be used for walking trail in and out. But it has been pretty minimal within the actual park area itself with our highway staff usage that way. We did build the parking lot. We built the some of the area by the picnic tables, kind of got some rock spread in there. So a little bit here and there. Hasn't been a ton of time. It is something that we haven't spent a lot more time at Wildcat. A lot more time at Botcher Park over the last 5 years than what we expected. We didn't expect this type of project to come about, but there's their benefits. Yes. Where do we want to spend our resources? And that goes to the wishes of the board.
How much use is there down there, Brent?
At times, often I'll drive by, there's no vehicles in the parking lot. Sometimes I'll drive by, there's, 1 or 2 vehicles there. Overall, I really don't know the total usage. We don't have a pedestrian count or anything keeping track of actual users.
You probably couldn't say how this would affect the use.
I really can't. It's not like it's right, adjacent to a city or in a city where someone can just walk right out to there. They need to drive out to this area.
I usually go by it. Right. First year, there was a fair amount of people there. But that's just outside.
You commented earlier that eventually there might be some mandates coming down as far as these, like, pollinator thing.
Yes, so, as any type of species goes from, threatened to, there's any threatened or endangered species, depending on where it's at on the federal list, we have requirements for, trout streams and the bats, for the northern long-eared bat, the rust-batch bumblebee and monarch butterflies are the next 2 species more likely to get added to the list. So there's already, they're being looked at on a basis now. It's really close to adding requirements. And what that's going to ultimately do is when you start developing any project, you need to look at, what are the impacts of that species. So paving a roadway that's existing pavement probably is not going to, impact those species. Go through to rebuild a bridge structure, or you do a grading job, you're disturbing the grasses outside the road surface, absolute ability to look at the impacts of that. So the longer that this can get delayed, where we keep these species, don't want to say thriving, but keep them at their sustainable levels, that they're not dropping in the number of bumblebees and monarchs, it definitely helps us out in the future.
So would you say $2,000 out of county's pocket to keep the mowing and stuff, or would that maybe wouldn't get it done?
Overall staff time with the equipment costs, it's gonna be more than that. It's not equipment and staff, it's not already on staff. It's not new money added to our budget. It's just shifting, what we're doing with our time.
Especially in the rest of the year. Get rid of it, cut it down.
Maintain it for 10.
Yeah.
But there shouldn't be much maintenance. And
No,
once the 3rd year has come, then you're gonna have 1 year of mowing someplace. 5th year.
yeah, just mow it once.
And to be honest, if we really wanted to proceed, if you think this is a good use of the park, if we don't accept the grant money and do it anyway with 100% local money, it's going to cost $1,000 more max. That we don't have the grant restrictions and requirements that we need to meet, then we're totally do it on our own. And we could still try to meet those same requirements without having any tails that we're held to.
That might be the way to go.
And then it keeps the money freed up for other sites.
Yeah, we got a whole list of landowners with rim easements that, haven't contacted yet, so if you guys pass it up, I'll just ask the next person down the line. Go from there.
If we do it with our own funding, we don't have to do the full 1.7 acres. Maybe we could shrink the size of the,
Can definitely pick and choose which area.
What we're gonna do?
What's the feeling? Need a motion to approve it or?
Make a motion to not approve it.
second,
Second. This motion would be to not go forward with the application. Okay, further discussion.
Just a lot of unknowns with the funding in the long term.
Further? If not, all in favor say aye. Opposed say nay of the motion. Carry.
Thank you though for doing.
Thank you.
a lot of
Yeah.
work.
No problem.
Thank you for your time.
Yep,
Dan.
thank you.
Couple more minutes before our getting in the interview thing. I was going to number 3, consider approving an IUP for Jeff and Kelly Moss to have a temporary farm dwelling in Mayville Township. Marcus.
Yes. What we have is, it's an interim use permit for a temporary farm dwelling. There was previously a farm dwelling there. The permit was issued in 1993, and the way it was written is that it was exclusively for the person that was there at the time. So this is a new permit, or what's going to occur is the parents are going to move into the temporary dwelling, which already exists, the septic and everything is set up. And then the children that are moving back to the farm will occupy the house.
Straightforward.
They're commonly done.
Okay, so we're gonna move back out to the home farm. Right.
and if the parents leave the farm, then the house becomes, that to get rid of or move it.
Our language is a little bit better this time. It's more like if it's a person that's working on the farm, then they can continue on. So we're trying to avoid the situation that occurred from the previous permit.
Mother would be. Move into the trailer and the son's gonna move into the house.
Exactly.
And they're all on the farm.
And they're all employed there, right? That, which meets the
Parents leave, it's gotta be somebody that works the farm.
exclusively that farm, yes.
That gets revisited then.
I'll make a motion to approve the IUP for Jeff and Kelly Moss.
I'll second it.
Discussion. Being none, all in favor say aye. Aye, opposed say nay, carried. One more in here, looks like, number 4, consider approving a CUP for Kimberly Burricker and Doug Dahlman for substantial land alteration in La Crescent Township.
What this is, it's conditional use permit for, they were filling a bank in. And when you exceed certain slopes and certain volumes, it requires a conditional use permit. So that's what's occurring here is that the permit is being issued. Doug, actually sitting back here, they did a good job. They filled it in. They maintained control over it, and it should be getting close. You still waiting on your culvert?
Yeah, got backed up.
I think once they have that, they're getting close to being able to finish it up, and that should be basically at the end of it.
It's a filling in project.
And we're approving it after the fact.
We are.
There was some discussion that he had and calls that were made, whatnot, so I kind of talked to him a few times, and I talked to Martin and looked at the site, so there was a little bit of, lack of better words, confusion on the process, but he's worked directly with Martin and done everything.
Doug has been,
that they said.
that once we worked on it, he's been very good.
Very nice.
Nice. Let's certainly
It
say.
wasn't kind of a behind backdoor thing. He just-
And he
talked to Aaron
Lackner in 2020 about it.
so I talked to you about that, and he told me this.
So I mean, I think I'll make a motion to approve it because everything he did was really nice, helped improve the area. And he did it all by the book and he worked real well with Martin. I'll make a motion to approve his CUT.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Further discussion? Being none,
If it's after the fact, there's a fee.
It's usually triple, and then the planning commission recommended not making it triple. The other nuance that does go along with it is if the project is less than $1,000 in cost, you can waive the cost. And so if I understand right, your father-in-law donated his efforts for free, the dirt was free. So there've been a number of things that have kept the cost low. So that kind of falls in that category too. So
further discussion? Being none, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Right,
Martin, as you're here.
Yeah.
Got a notice yesterday email from your BOA agenda.
Board of Adjustment, okay.
Yeah. The last one on your agenda. It's a variance for a non-conforming use, that's all it says, what? How is that possible?
Is this the Jeff Seeley?
Yep.
The Jeff Seeley one is basically, I went to external counsel and asked how can we even give consideration to it, and that was the recommended route that they told me.
So the county attorney gave you,
Jay Squires. Was to go through you're talking section 9.3. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that was his approach to how we could give consideration to it.
so the county attorney, but Jay Squires said this.
Jay Squire said that. yes.
County attorney didn't give you his take on it, or?
Sam was basically talk with them, so. It's different.
Well, it's just a little puzzling to me, because that. Can't give a variance for a non-conforming use, I mean, it's just not.
It's the way I'd need to show you the paperwork, which I gladly will. Is the question is can the Board of Adjustment make a decision? And so that was part of it is that can they even act on this, and his recommendation, I'll gladly send that information.
This variance is to allow a second residence within a quarter court,
Right.
because it was erroneously allowed in the past.
Basically,
Well, too long, don't make it right.
right.
Is that what you're gonna say?
It is a case of, being pushed on it a little bit, so.
Well, that's one thing, but it. A mistake was made in the past, doesn't mean it needs to be made again.
Yes, no, I understand that.
But it's going to the Board of Adjustment, so it's automatic. I just. Call it the question.
anybody would see that.
Well, in the board packet, we will certainly itemize, what we have and what we don't.
That's September for the Board of Adjustment. We gotta keep our nose
I
out
think
of
we
it.
gotta keep our nose out of it. Deserve the quasi judicial role in that.
Okay,
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
at this time, we're gonna go into some interviews,
Are they gonna be open to the public interviews, or do we gotta go in the closed?
It's gonna be open. Did you want to really quick?
I think we should finish up our action item.
People?
Well, yeah, I think. We're gonna have to have public health people get this one here done. At least,
I think we should do all the action items.
Yeah, let's-
we're going to keep on them, because it might take, well, how quick are they gonna be? But the next one will be the number 5 of the resolution 23 and LG 220 application for exempt permit for gambling.
that should be fairly quick.
That should be pretty quick. I
Donna?
won't read it all.
Donna,
Hi, Commissioners. Yep, that is just an application received from Sheldon Valley Sportsman's Association, and they're just requesting an approval for a gambling permit to run their annual running deer shoot and fall raffle to be held on Sunday, October 8th, and at the gun range located at 11511 County Road 10, Caledonia Township. And the township has approved it. So basically, it's just the county has to approve it.
I make a motion to approve.
Second,
Discussion?
it's nice to see one come in advance.
Thank you.
All right,
Thank you.
all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Carry. John, tell us about the support of the dental mobile project.
Try and make this as quick as possible. I have some of my staff here today. The first one, dental access grant. We've been working on a dental access clinic and have been working with two healthcare providers, UCare and Blue Cross Blue Shield. UCare has indicated they'll accept a grant application for us to support one time a month dental access clinic. The issue here is access to individuals, particularly those who have medical assistance or Minnesota Care. Their access to dental care for themselves and for children is very, very limited, if at all. Oftentimes people need to travel, I don't know, to Rochester or further. So we're excited about this. Jordan and her staff and Mary Zapke have worked really hard to find a partner in the Twin Cities who provides this kind of remote dental access clinic. And initially with this grant that will go to UCare, we'll be able to do one time a month for dental hygienist and assessment, and probably in the neighborhood of quarterly for treatment if necessary. We're also working with Blue Cross Blue Shield to try and encourage them to follow the same path as UCare, and the potential would be there that we could add a second day. This is just the tip of the iceberg. The dental access is similar to childcare access that we were talking about before, but it's a step in the right direction. We're excited about it. So today we're asking for permission to submit a grant to UCare to help offset any costs that would be coming back to us. The vast majority of costs for those monthly dental access clinics would be covered by the agency we're partnering with, either through their billing or through other grant dollars they have.
This grant covers the cost of transportation to and from the cities to get down to Houston.
Right.
That's covering that.
Yep.
UCare or Blue Cross Blue Shield, if they partner, will cover the costs of the actual treatment.
No,
That comes from the state.
it's either they're already covered with their service, either through other grant funds that they have or through third-party billing. We need to cover the transportation. And so we've reached out to UCare to say, can you cover that? And we're pretty confident we'll get it. So today we're asking for permission to submit that grant.
It's an interesting concept. I make a motion we work to get the grant.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Carry. Next one is towards zero deaths. Consider approving grant submission towards zero deaths. Office traffic.
So we have been part of the TZD, or Towards Zero Death group, in Houston County and Fillmore County for a number of years. During the pandemic, at the end of the pandemic, we didn't get the TZD grant. There typically is two parts to this. There's the law enforcement side of it. So Brian and his shop will get a grant periodically to do enforcement efforts as it relates to traffic safety. Public health has been engaged in that more from a public health education perspective. And toward the end of the pandemic, we did not receive the grant. And then last year, we did not apply as we were kind of in transition in our public health department. We want to get back into that, largely driven by some spike we've seen in serious traffic accidents and fatalities, and with a focus on speed and impaired driving. That grant's going to be in the neighborhood of $4,000 to $5,000. It's not.
I think it's
That's
a good
yours.
idea.
That's your side of the TZD grant. The
Correct.
sheriff's department will do their own.
Correct. Oh, sheriff's office is not applying this year for TZD.
On a side note, there's been, was it 3 or 4 fatalities in Houston County this year?
Yeah.
5?
5?
Can the various cities apply for TZD independently?
They can, but it's more difficult to not do it at a county level.
The county has chosen not to.
You know, you guys could come up too and join in.
I was gonna bring them up because this is free. See, there's.
As well. So even though they're not applying on their own, we're trying to get them to be part of our coalition so the efforts can still be extended to those cities. They're welcome.
Thank you.
I think it's a very good program.
All right.
Isn't TZD, when you do it with law enforcement, it pays for the overtime for them to
Some of the grant-
patrol
some of the
outside
grant-
of their jurisdiction, outside of their local
In
jurisdiction,
addition to their normal work,
is that what you're talking about? Caledonia
they're more an educational and
education?
Yeah, the public health side of it is public health education, but there's a coalition that includes law enforcement. I think that's what the reason.
the education part of it, I feel is just as important as the enforcement. I'm glad to see you look together this.
Oh, I'll make a motion that we go for the TZD grant.
I'll second that.
Discussion, all in favor, say aye. Opposed, say nay, carried. Final thing here is consider.
Assuming we're successful, I'll be coming back with a motion to accept those grants. Thank you, a lot, guys.
Thank you all.
Consider approving a letter of commitment for match of the Minnesota Housing Program. Community homeowner impact ARPA monies for a one-time match.
Yep, so Cindy reached out to Bobby from Fillmore County and you guys have already approved the one-time $20,000 match out of ARPA, assuming that the Community Homeowner Impact Fund is awarded through the Bluff Country HRA. This is just a letter of support saying, yes, you'll have Dewey sign on behalf of the board.
So is Fillmore County doing it too?
They are.
Move to approve.
Second, I'll second it.
Well, all we're doing is just proving a letter of support. Right?
Right.
Yep. Because we've done the funding thing already.
The letter within the packet.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay, carried. Okay, now we can go to our interviews. First is, Michelle. And I apologize for our tardiness, but I'm glad you're here. Yes.
Yes, commissioners. I have packets for you, which has questions identified for each of you. I've gone through the questions with the board chair. And it also has a paper copy of the applicant's candidate's resume, which I previously reported to and just make a quick announcement here. I'm also putting a copy of the questions printed for the candidates so that as you go through them, they will have the questions in front of you. So your packets are put together in such a way your questions will be in front of the candidates. So if they reflect and pull their thoughts together, they will be able to go through this with you. Each of your packets have, for instance, with Michelle Quinn's copy of her redacted resume, as well as then your sheet to rate them. Let's just score them. And then when you
Want to go
start
through the
looking at,
scoring with us?
pardon me?
Want to go through the scoring and how that is?
Yep.
works?
I sure it will. And then I just had for ease, kind of put the questions going down the by district, so that each of you have and your name will appear there. Just for ease of tracking for yourself. Okay, so there are 11 questions in total. You will some of these first round questions are 2 parts, so each of you will have multiple components to your questions. And it's pretty straightforward. If commissioners have a follow-up question based upon the individual's response, please, any commissioner, feel free to ask for further clarification or expansion if they're wanting a little more information about from the individual about the response that they are providing. So it's more conversational a little bit. We have the better part of, I informed each candidate that they have about 45 minutes for their interview. So it will be fairly tight schedule. And welcome, Michelle Quinn. So I want to thank the candidate for her application for the position of interim auditor treasurer. We appreciate each of our candidates taking the time to meet with the Board of Commissioners today. We have approximately 45 minutes, as I said, and several questions for Michelle. This is a scored interview based on the responses they provide today, as well as the materials that they have submitted, which will form the basis of individual commissioners scoring each candidate. Thereafter, the individual, depending upon how your individual scores, you will necessarily have rank order your candidates based upon the scores that you individually provide. Each commissioner, as an elected office from an individual district, will then have equal voices at the table. So we will determine, I'm getting ahead of myself just a wee bit. Your scores will then, your ratings will then come back to the HR office, to the personnel office, and I will tally your scores individually, how you individually ranked your candidates, and present a summary back to the Board of Commissioners. And you can take your action then at your July, based upon how you rank them, based upon at your July 25th meeting.
So
Okay.
you're not gonna, the scoring, each give a score for each candidate. You don't add those scores all up.
No,
So
this is
doing
consistent with
composite-
past practice.
This is composite scoring then, or it's not a total score?
So let's say Commissioner Burns scores candidate A. I'm just being very arbitrary here. Candidate A at 50 points, candidate B at 35 points, candidate C at 60 points. That then determines that commissioner's rank order. Candidate C is first, your first order candidates. Candidate A would be your second, candidate C your third. So each of you have equal voices. Then when you come back, see if you have tie scores, absolute tie scores, then you may wish to have a second interview, a brief second interview. Otherwise, the majority who received was the #1 ranked candidate would be your highest scoring candidate.
Basically, we're adding up our numbers from the bottom of each question, 1 through 5. And at the end of the interview, we add all those numbers together, that'll be our score.
For that candidate. And you may want to take a day on reflection. You may not want to score them until you get to the end of your interviews.
Yep.
Because to keep your scoring at par with your first through your fourth candidate. There is no just one way of doing that. but I would like to collect them sometime. So I can give you at least a summary for your work session. And then you know what you're going into for your next board meeting.
So you're not. The scoring, you're not gonna add up all our scores and then that's the top score. You're just gonna do three. Whoever gets three commissioners' top scores, that's it.
Each commissioner will be able for their first, their top candidate, their second ranked candidate, their third ranked candidate, based upon their individual scoring.
And if three commissioners have one candidate as their number one, 60% of the board, that would then be the candidate.
Well, that'd be my recommendation.
Don't have anybody with three commissioners having them first, then we have to go. Yeah, right.
That's different than what they do in other departments. Whatever.
The departments are, when you have the department, you are not having. We're talking about people that report to the department and not to the Board of Commissioners. This position reports directly to the board. This is consistent with how we've done previous board searches.
So do you have to give reasons for all your scores? Or is your score gonna be the score even if you don't give a reason?
It is best practices to write down your objective reasons for the scoring that you're providing. And there's basis on each of these sheets to do that. There's a Likert score of 1 to 5.
Will
for each of these?
Will commissioner's score be reduced for lack of reason?
No, it's just best practices. And Commissioner, we reviewed this earlier. It's best practices to substantiate your scores for equal opportunity purposes, to write down why you're coming to it. It creates just a more complete record.
Okay,
Okay,
everybody in understanding, we'll go forward with Bill Clinton.
Morning, Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to meet with you and discuss the skills that I would bring to this opportunity.
And I apologize for tardiness, but we got business done, so I guess the first thing is give us a brief summarize your work history that we believe will be preparing you for the duties of the Houston County Auditor Treasurer.
I have worked in several levels of government over the past 15 plus years. I started out at the township level as an elected clerk for a term and a half, followed by joining the auditor's office here at Houston County in 2008, I believe, and served in the auditor's office until taking an opportunity to join the assessor's office here at Houston County. When I was in the assessor's office, there was an unexpected resignation, which I was brought back down to the auditor's office to provide continuity of operations. So I was the interim auditor here in Houston County for a short period while there was elections, so that a duly qualified candidate could be properly elected to the combined office of auditor treasurer. Following that, I did join the city of Houston, so now I have been serving as the administrator there for about the last 3 years. So I have added even additional supervisory and other types of skills, along with fostering additional relationships with other communities. And this provides me with a nice broad base. And a lot of times I can see the full loop of how things interact with one another, whether it be the cities with the county, the townships, the entire loop for like assessment to tax calc to collections. I can see a lot of those full loops based on my experience.
Good. Yes, I start the questions here. But,
Did you read the part about improved relevant certifications and training? Dewey? When that first question,
Oh,
I didn't hear about the relevant certifications and
Well,
training.
certifications and training. What would you have in that?
For several years, while I was employed by Houston County, I did hold the certification as a county elections administrator. That has since lapsed. But you know, that's a 15-hour training that's offered every 2 years. So to obtain it back, in addition, since I am running the city elections with my current position, I have kept abreast of election law, and I do continue the trainings that are required there, which is only 5 hours. So to reobtain that certification would be very simple. Other trainings, of course, with the county, they had invested the time in me to become an income qualified assessor. Again, that's lapsed because there are CEUs that are required, and when you're not actively practicing in that, you don't necessarily keep that up. But that would be an additional item that, you know, I still have that education to draw upon because that goes with you wherever you go.
Yeah, thank you. Guess I'll start with question number 2. It's a 2-part question. Describe in detail your understanding of the auditor treasury election administration duties, both prior and post-election.
Okay. So the auditor treasurer's election is in charge of the county elections. That includes everything to obtaining the appropriate training, to providing training, and there are several areas of training which must be provided to your city clerks, your township clerks. They include areas of security, challenges in the polling place, clerk duties, hand counting of ballots. Every aspect of the polling place needs to be, you need to prepare a training program that meets all of those benchmarks and then deliver it to the election judges, the clerks, the election judges, head election judges, and healthcare facility judges, so that each of them has the appropriate level. You're responsible to track that information and maintain records of that. You're responsible for ballot preparation, the programming that goes into the electronics that are used on election. You're responsible to be a liaison with the public who has questions. You have to meet the deadlines, 45 days in order to have the UOCAVA ballots available and to maintain the lists, statewide voter registration systems. You're going to ensure that all the benchmark dates are met, advertising, publishing, posting. Then you are responsible to have public testing in advance of the elections, which I know there has been some changes with most recent legislation. On election night, you're going to be responsible to receive returns for, I'm talking the bigger elections, and you're going to, you and your staff are going to be uploading data into the state's, Secretary of State's website. You're going to enter statistics. You're going to be responsible to securely put away those materials and store them for the 22 months until after the challenge periods are completed. There are very specific details with that. Following the election, once everything has been uploaded and approved, you will, you're responsible to provide certificates of election within the statutory guidelines. You're also responsible to have a post-election equipment review. So you're going to call together people in the public and other districts that you have trained and worked with to ensure that the public can see an opportunity to show that the ballots that were sealed on election night and that were run through the counters on election day, that you can pull those out, and when they are hand counted, that those match. So you are instilling public confidence in the entire system throughout, in advance of the elections and after the elections. There's some unique things with school district elections because those are a bit more autonomous. I am aware that this year, or prior to the end of 2024, I anticipate this office will be responsible to at least spearhead 6 elections, because I know there's one on August 8th. There's another in November. Those are school district. They'll be followed by the presidential nominating primary in I believe February. And then you will go on with March township elections, followed by your primary and your general elections in August. And
Can you provide some experience you've had with these elections over the years?
throughout my time in the auditor treasurer's office, because I came from being a township clerk, which I was trained by the county to perform those clerk duties, I was hired in 2008, which was an election year. And I was hired in July, so we were already well underway into the election season. I was responsible to assist the auditor at the time with providing training, with helping to proof the training, deliver that training. I staffed the polls at the county polling place during the Saturdays when they're required to be open, which I also know there have been additional days that have been added to that requirement with recent legislation. I'm a bit of a geek about it, so I do keep up on this, so I always have. And then did serve in the period when the Franken-Coleman recount was conducted. So I was part of state recount efforts with the auditor at that time. So very aware of ballot security, having good policies and procedures in place to meet those criteria. Which included at that time, you had a sign in. There was one key to the vault, and anytime someone entered it for election purposes, you had 2 people of differing political parties that would join you to sign in, sign out, state your purpose, and record all that so that you have a good paper trail should it be requested by the public. In addition, we had the state recount, so the auditor and I were worked with a group of election judges who came in from the community, the county, to help serve on that capacity. And we were responsible for if the political parties that were allowed to observe raised question about the category that the election judge placed a certain ballot in. So if it was a vote for Franken, a vote for Coleman, or other, they would contest that. And you had a very specific way of marking those ballots, recording that data, making a copy of it, because you were actually sending the originals up to the canvassing board at the state. And of course, all these things are under very tight timeframes because state canvassing board dates are set early in the election cycle. And you have to get all the recounting completed in time to have your materials to them for their review in time.
Thank you.
Okay, this is a 2-part question. Please describe the auditor's treasurer's key duties regarding properties.
The assessor office is in charge of valuing property, and once the values have been set, there is a process where all the levy data that's been submitted by levying authorities, which includes soil and water conservation districts, the various school districts that have levying authority across our county, the townships and the cities, and of course the county, you have to enter all of that levy data so that rates can be calculated, which is done by the system. And then you're going to take, well, the computer's going to, but you're going to have to make sure that there's processes to update when different things like mineral rights are severed. There are certain things you have to do to make sure that those calculations are performed within the system. And then you're going to calculate rates and for all those taxing jurisdictions, which some of them are used. You actually have to communicate them with the districts, and it's also provided in the packet that goes out, that has gone out with the truth and taxation meetings. So once you have all of those updates, or like severed mineral rights, and you have the values from the assessor, and you have all the levies entered from all the various taxing districts, then you're going to generate taxes. you'll be responsible to work with the firm. I know the county has always done an outside vendor that prints the proposed tax statements or the tax bills. And you'll work with that vendor to ensure that the appropriate data is on there. Last season, there was additional requirements for that reporting. The cities were required to report additional levy detail to the county auditor's office, and that was to be included and available to the public. So you have to ensure that you have received all of that information. And then at the point when you have collected all of it, coordinated all of it, then you're going to need to get the tax statement sent out in adequate time so that the assessor's office can hold their meetings and that the TNT meetings can be held. And taxpayers have to be advised. There's deadlines, so they have to have notice in advance of those things. Because another item that's included on those notices for the TNT notices, all the dates when the meetings are for those taxing districts are included. So you're also gathering that data to be included on those notices. If people are delinquent, the auditor treasurer's office is also responsible to publish the delinquency list on the first year and track all the remaining delinquent tax properties, because there is process. If people fail, a lot of times it's down to 3 years. There are some 5-year, I believe there's still probably some 5-year options where if someone fails to pay their taxes in that timely, that property tax forfeits. I did, when I was working for the auditor's office, we did have tax forfeiture, so I've seen that entire process. I know when I was interim auditor, there was properties that were in the midst of that process. So there, again, there's proper notification, there's posting, there's holding an appropriate auction for the tax forfeited properties, and then applying for the state deed so that that property can be transferred and that the title is clean for the next buyer. And all of those things have deadlines. They have notice requirements. They have publishing requirements, and all of those have to be coordinated and met according to statute.
Second part of the question, and you kind of touched on it already, but any experience you may have in tax calculation and collection process. You
And
kind of touched on it a little already.
I think so.
Yeah, yep. Thank you.
It's my turn. Another 2-part question. Please describe the auditor treasurer's office's role regarding land parcel record.
The auditor treasurer's role will receive documents each day from the recorder's office for recording. The auditor's office is responsible to ensure that the legal description on the property, there's a couple of different methods to doing this. If it's platted, you can simply look at the plat. They're auditing the legal description to ensure that the parcel closes, that it's a complete parcel, that there's no gaps in the legal description, 20 calls that make it, instead of being a closed perimeter, I'd say, to ensure that it is not erroneous, I guess. Many times when there's splits, they would be responsible to draw out those parcels. I believe they still enter that data into GIS and use that as a tool. The other things they may do is refer to a previous document to ensure that the legal description was identical. Then they're going to, there's deed tax included, so they're going to receive that. They're going to log it into things to trigger other departments to do the business they have. They're going to enter it into the changes, whether it be an ownership or if a new parcel is created, they're going to enter that into the AS400 system so that it is available to the auditor or the assessor's office. If it's a new parcel split, the assessor's office is going to need to review that and apply a value to it for future tax calculation purposes. they used to, I know, log it into a system that was shared internally for other departments so that each department could do the things that were necessary, like the assessor's office would send out homestead applications to new owners of property if appropriate, or programs. But really in the auditor's office, they're gonna audit the legal description. They're going to track the data. They're going to enter it into the appropriate systems, whether that be taxes, so that taxes are directed properly. They're going to receipt, deed tax receipt. They're going to look to see if it's possible there would be special assessments paid at the time of closing. So of course they would receipt those and make appropriate documentation to that effect. And then return it to the recorder's office for recording.
You kind of alluded to some of this again, but please provide examples of experience you have in working with legal descriptions.
I worked with, I was trained by the previous auditor to actually draw out legal descriptions. Continue to use that little skill today to help me navigate different maps and things at the city. And I did perform the recording of all those details throughout that tenure with the department. Receipted the monies, worked with it almost on a daily basis when I was with the department. So, and then did a lot of drawing in of splits in GIS because I was trained to use that software to do that. And also updating like AS400 with the tax records, which I continue to use in the assessor's office. So the entire time I was with the county, I was using that, those skills in my daily work.
All right, mine's a two-part as well. Describe your understanding of the auditor treasurer's statutory duties as related to the county board of commissioners.
The statutory duty is that you are clerk to the county board. And I've been clerking elected boards for 15 plus years. Whether it be the township, the county, because I did sit in these meeting rooms for many, many years, about 9 of them, 10 of them, when I was employed by the county. It includes keeping an accurate record of the proceedings, of the actions, maintaining the documents that are passed through your care or for your consideration so that they can be recalled. It includes if action is taken to follow that through, say you ratify a contract, if it's something that was brought to you by the auditor treasurer's office, once that contract's ratified and you're going to secure the board chair's signatures, it's likely it's gone through the county attorney. You'll want to forward those on to the appropriate parties. If this elected body takes action to adopt resolutions, it may be something that needs to be forwarded on to legislators, or might be something as simple as a civic group. I know there's been times when the county board has done something to recognize a civic group. So you're going to want to ensure that those documents are directed to those parties on behalf of the board. You're going to assist with organizing the agenda and ensuring that all business that needs to come to the board is included for consideration, providing all the packet information and ensuring that there's background information that prepares you to do your job and to take action accordingly. Yes, statutory wise, it's just, I guess I don't have any good Minnesota statute language to explain. It kind of comes second nature at this point.
And the second part of it is, what is your specific experience in reporting to and or working with elected public board?
Well, I started working with elected boards at the township level, and that was in 2005 or 2006. From time I was with the county from 2008 to fall 2019, all but 1 year of that was spent clerking the county board with the auditor, right beside me. But it was my responsibility to draft the minutes and to present her with a final copy for your approval. While I was in the auditor's office, I also found that I like to scan documents because it was very easy when the auditor's office is called on for some information that went through the county board to do an electronic search. I found it to be very efficient, and while we still kept paper records, once they were made electronic, it expedited the ability of staff to locate and share. Sometimes, say, finance would call down and say, hey, do you have a copy of that contract that was approved for such and such? And a quick search, and you could send them the electronic copy, and it was very efficient, it was very streamlined, and it made it accessible and shareable very quickly. So that was something I did while I was actually in the office and actually performing those duties myself, which I think was a good benefit. I know when I had department heads that would call on the department for certain things that they put through the department, they were often very complimentary that it was a quick turnaround to receive the information. I've always had good experiences with the public boards and that I have been the clerk for or served as clerk to. I enjoy the work very much. Obviously, if I've been doing it this long. So.
I guess next, mine's a two-part. Describe how you would address an upset or an irritated member of the public.
People nowadays want to be heard. So you do have to take time to listen to their concerns. When they're upset and frustrated, sometimes it's hard for people to articulate in a way that someone receiving that information can understand it well. So trying to diffuse the situation if it is heated or tense, that's going to help the person to be able to articulate to me and in a way that I can understand what is their concern, problem, or the cause of their frustration. So when I work with the public, it is important to me to listen calmly and try and gather the information so I understand what the problem is that they're trying to address or have addressed. It's important not to become emotional because sometimes when, that just kind of feeds the fire. So to remain calm and to talk about facts and to use those to navigate the situation seems to serve me well. In my current role, if I'm sharing experience, we have with government, there seems to always be contentious issues where someone is unhappy. You watch it, even with the elections, that's a significant one. It's important to understand what the person's concern or complaint is, because then you can respond appropriately. Don't take things personally because a lot of this is outside of either person's control, but you need to find an effective way to communicate your responses to that individual. And it's important to have hopefully a few different ways to relay that information because people don't always understand it. If you try to communicate it one way and they don't understand it, you can't just be a broken record and repeat it. You have to find a different way to say the same thing. And that's important. And I found that also to serve me well. We have in the city of Houston right now, we have a contentious project where I have a lot of public interaction. It happens to be the OHV park. So it's best to stay very focused on the facts of the situation and to be able to provide those facts to the people that have concerns. I won't say they always leave satisfied, but hopefully they leave with a better understanding than when they came. I know there were times when I know there were 2 times during elections where we had people come into the office here at the county that were upset. One of them happened to be an individual who was required by statute to be notified that their absentee ballot had not been accepted. I don't recall the specific circumstances, but the person was very irate and once you can say, here is the rule, because I know what the rules were. I could explain what the deficiency on the ballot was that caused it to be rejected. While it didn't satisfy that person, I could sleep at night because I knew the information. I was able to relay it to the person. And even though they were still frustrated that their ballot didn't count and their vote didn't count, they understood why. Because they had that detail and those facts available to them. That person did continue, I believe, to vote by absentee, and there was always a snarky comment about whether or not their ballot would count. But I think ultimately that person was never required during the time I was here to notify that person a second time that their ballot didn't count. So I would say they did learn something from that experience, which is a win for everyone.
Can you share an experience you may have had and an ultimate outcome of the interaction?
Which you kind of already.
Just to do.
You looked ahead there and saw the question.
I think you probably answered that already.
Anything else? Very good. This is how you deal with coworkers. Provide an example of how you would positively influence coworkers or direct reports and contributed to strengthening morale and service.
Like I said, I have taken my public service positions from the time I was a township clerk very seriously. I've also learned that what's in the past is in the past. So I'm very much a person to promote, okay, even if we're faced with a problem today, this is our problem, we identify it. We're not going to look in the past. It's good for context, but it doesn't change anything because here's where we are. So this is what I endeavor to emulate, I guess, is that we identify our problems and we look forward. The context is the context, but what's done yesterday, it's in the past, and it doesn't matter who did it, why it happened, for the most part. And I am not a person to look for blame. I am a person to look for solutions and to move forward, because that's ultimately, today is the present, tomorrow, we need to better ourselves. And that's how you better yourselves. You don't dwell on what you can't control, which is the decision that was made yesterday. What you can control is that you have reviewed everything and that you have made a plan that you can take forward into tomorrow to be better tomorrow than you were yesterday, I guess. I'm very much a team person. I want to bring out the best in everyone. I know I've had people that I respect very greatly that comment about how, you should always look if you have staff that you have employed or worked with, and they move on to opportunities that are better for them. That is a testament to you, because you help them grow to be desirable to another organization, or you have provided them with the skills and latitude to shine where they shine. It's also important to identify it's very important to identify people's skills and to understand where their challenges lie, because then you can ensure that they're basically, someone put it that I respect very much, they're in the right seat on the bus so that the bus is functioning optimally and efficiently and to the best of its ability. So and make sure you give credit where credit is due, and it takes a team. These government jobs, it's a team that's making these things happen. It's not just one person. So I've been fortunate. I've worked with many wonderful teams, and I want other people to have the same experience that I've had.
How do you approach differences or conflicts between individuals within your team?
It's always
Which
challenging.
hardly ever happens, I'm sure.
It's always a challenge. It's important to be direct. And it's important to address any challenges or conflicts between individuals. It's not good to make a mountain out of a molehill, but it's also very beneficial when you can keep little things little. I think with the way I look, people have different personalities, so it's looking for the good qualities that people have and accepting that everyone has faults that might irritate someone else. It's just acceptance and tolerance and respectfulness of one another. And that is why I try, like the last question I talk about, it's a team. Everyone has a gift to bring to the table. It's just finding those things. When conflicts arise, it's probably because someone doesn't feel heard, or someone feels that someone maybe that didn't deserve credit got credit, that someone else is getting something that they're not afforded. So that's why, kind of with the previous question, it's important to give credit where credit is due, but it's also a team, and everyone on the team has something to contribute. And that synergy of all those contributions it usually results in good things. Hopefully, if you put a team together and assemble one that works and believes that culture, and you foster that culture, hopefully conflict's going to be minimal. If there is conflict, it's going to be addressed, and we're going to be direct about it and work forward. Because again, everyone has the opportunity to improve, whether it be in skills or just their emotional intelligence. All those things, given the right tools and the right atmosphere, people can grow. And I guess that's how I roll.
My question. Please describe one of your most challenging or frustrating work-related experiences you have faced and the outcome.
Even challenging and frustrating. Okay. I've shared with you that I recognize and I have worked hard to develop the appropriate skills within myself to deal with, say, a difficult person. And what I find frustrating is, because I'm aware of that, and because I do believe that I have skills that, okay, if I convey information to you and you don't understand it, or you continue with the same argument, and then I've tried to explain it in a different way or provided a different example, and you still continue to kind of, you're still on that same path and same argument. It's very frustrating for me professionally to be unable to find a way to communicate to you that would have you recognize maybe there's more at play, or there's a different perspective that they're not considering. Maybe they don't have all the facts, but they just don't believe something's true. That's very frustrating to me, because I have worked to develop that skill and be able to effectively communicate. I have a person that I deal with very regularly at the city, and I know I said something the other night. They must be the ultimate debater, because it doesn't matter what piece of evidence, what additional perspectives that should be considered. It doesn't matter what tool I pull out of my toolbox. It's just going to be a never-ending argument. And while I find that frustrating, I can look back on some of those arguments, and I think I learned something each time of how to deal with that individual. And I learn more each time how to better communicate and work with, so that it is a positive experience. And I guess I take away from that, that even if I can't say change, I don't like to say change their mind, but I don't feel confident that they've looked at the big picture. I can feel positive that I'm still learning something, and I'm still becoming better at what I do. And that is going to serve me every day that I deal with the public. And I guess that's important to me. And yeah. Also, I guess when I worked in the auditor's office, one of the reasons I identified an opportunity that would allow me to have some additional education, and it would be, there was a financial component that it had a little more opportunities for financial growth for me personally. And when I walk through those doors, it's always been a positive thing. And the best thing I can say is, every bit of information you can learn and to better yourself, you take with it wherever you go. And that's what I've done with each opportunity that's I've come across. I've been able to take all of that with me, and I use it every day. And I guess that's one of my positive things about, even though I was challenged and left a department for a different opportunity, the outcome is I just added to my portfolio of knowledge, and I'm able to use that for the benefit of whoever I'm serving, and also for myself.
Yeah, I get the next one. How do you describe what gets top priority when scheduling your time?
If there's in the auditor treasurer's office, you're going to have to look at the calendar, because there's deadlines that have to be met. And that is because they're statutory. That is going to dictate a lot of it. Sometimes things are very evident what takes priority. If you're working on a new policy or procedure, that's something you can do in quiet time. Where if you are getting ready for an election, you have to make sure that you're meeting all the statutory obligations for posting, publishing notices. So sometimes the calendar is going to dictate it. Otherwise, you're going to be looking at immediate needs, and it's going to be a constant juggle to figure out what needs to be addressed first, or what should have priority. The biggest thing is to stay focused on what is happening, and where there are deadlines that are impacted with your decisions and prioritization.
assuming you get this position, what do you anticipate will be the most challenging aspect of the job?
Right now, instilling public trust in the voting population and maintaining it is probably one of the bigger things, because that is probably one aspect of this job that affects the most number of people. Is that everyone's seen the news with recent elections. Everyone's looked at, recognizes the different tactics that different political groups use. And we see the division in the voting population, and instilling public trust and maintaining it is going to be critical. And that is probably one of the most challenging things.
So going through the question now, you have any questions or areas that you like of your experience and expertise that you wish to kind of highlight or that want to cover maybe by our questions you have? Well,
I think this was a pretty encompassing set of questions that kind of delved into everything. I look at it from each time when I move between the different levels of government in my career. It's all interconnected. And I believe that my success has been attributed to the fact that along the way, I've been afforded opportunities to gather additional tools. That's some, you can ask anyone of my staff. I talk about it. Knowledge is like Legos. The more knowledge you have, the bigger and better things you can build. And I've been fortunate, and I was with the county for many years. I was afforded wonderful opportunities to collect a whole lot of Legos. And this is my opportunity to bring those Legos back to build great things here. So, knowledge goes with you wherever you go.
And learn something every day,
Yep. And I have had some wonderful opportunities, and it's exciting. People see it when I talk to them. They're like, "Oh, you're geeking out on this." Yep, sorry. But to know, just the whole cycle of the valuation and taxation, it has served me so well in the public at those like TMT meetings and equalization meetings, because I know the whole picture. And so when you understand, when someone's asking a question, like when the assessor's office is there for Board of Equalization, they know that set of details. They know what's affected there. And whether or not the question is appropriate for that meeting or not, I can oftentimes help that resident understand it, even if it's outside of that, because I have the assessor's component, I have the auditor's component, and then I have how it sees, when checks are cut and settlements done, and the auditor treasurer is communicating that to the city. I have like the whole loop. I know I can follow the entire loop and have at least a broad familiarity with each component instead of just one component. It's like, it's just, it gives you a much better perspective, and you're able to share that information with others to help others understand it.
Thank you so much.
So, thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle.
Yeah, my shorts. on.
You wear your pants, but
Yeah.
I wore my shorts. too. I'm sorry.
You are?
Freezing.
Houston County resident's name, please. Can you hear me? Commissioners, can you hear me? Okay.
Number up.
We'll ask again a little later.
Yeah. Okay. We ready, commissioners?
Yep.
Okay, commissioners, our second candidate is here, Amy. And I will just go ahead and turn it over to the board chair.
Okay,
Morning.
morning. Well, to start with here, first one that says very briefly summarize the work history that you believe has prepared you for the duties of Houston County Auditor Treasurer. And then include some relevant certificates and trainings they have.
First, I'd like to thank the board for the opportunity to interview for this position. My name's Amy Silling and I work for the Environmental Services Department right now. I've been in that office for a couple of years, and some of you might remember me from when I worked in the auditor's office during the 2020 election. During the election, I did lots of voter records and worked the SVRS program, statewide voter registration. One thing that I had to be careful of was public information, and public information was very important to keep quiet and not share. We had to be careful about our records and not allow any paperwork to slip through the cracks. Everything had to go through the shredding process. I worked during COVID and when there were some staffing issues during the tax season, I actually managed the treasurer's office for an entire day by myself. Donna was able to communicate by phone, but she had multiple meetings that she was doing virtually. So I was able to answer questions and help people pay their taxes. I looked at parcels and tax payments that were due. I've also helped with balancing when people pay their taxes at the bank and we get all the receipts back from that. I helped ensure that they were balanced and everything was accounted for there. I'm also familiar in GIS stuff, and I work with a lot of legal descriptions. I'm familiar in parcel splits, and I also during my time at the zoning office, I worked on the rezone map and spent a lot of time reviewing the legal descriptions for the rezone since like the 1960s and made sure that the zoning map was correct for our upcoming land use plan.
The next page, I can start here, I guess. This is a two-part question. I'll read both parts so you can blend them together if you need. Describe in detail the understanding of the auditor treasurer's election administration duties both prior and post-election, and then provide some experience with elections if you have.
So obviously I worked in the elections office. when I first started there, we were sending out the absentee voter ballots. We had to go through and get all the information, all of the explanations of it and package that all up and send it out, make sure that every piece of information was in there along with the ballot and the inside internal envelope that keeps the ballot completely safe and so that when we open the external ballot with the person's name signed on it, we're able to separate them and no one knows who actually voted for who. So I worked with accepting and receiving ballots, spoiling ballots. I worked with duplicating a ballot, and that's when somebody makes multiple marks on their ballot and it's not going to go through the machine correctly. So two election judges have to sign off that they both work together to create a new ballot from what they could tell was voted for. We didn't change anything if we couldn't tell who was voting for what. But if we could tell that they clearly X'd over the circle that was there, we would make sure that we could change it so like that was not the correct one that I wanted to vote for and put the correct information in there. Both of us had to sign off to ensure that the ballot was marked correctly. I also worked with the canvassing process with the post-election. So a few days after the election, a few precincts were called on to go through and canvass or certify their ballots, make sure that everything matches what we have on record. We did have an issue during the 2020 election where we had some voters that switched districts or switched precincts during the election. And when we were going through, we saw that they had voted and we scanned them in. And we weren't thinking, well, they could have voted in a different. We took the new voter registrations and scanned those in separate from where they had originally been in. So our issue was that when we scanned in the new voters for their different precinct, they were marked twice. That was a huge problem that we spent a bunch of time on trying to figure out and make sure that we had the election correct, because obviously we don't want anybody voting twice. And that was one thing I worked on, was trying to find that. After a while, I was able to figure that out, and I brought it to the attention of Polly and Donna, and we got it corrected. There was also an issue. We had a voter that actually voted. He voted in the election, but he voted in Hennepin County. It was marked as he voted, and we scanned that document, and I had to call Hennepin County and explain that to them. That was kind of nerve-wracking because it was my mistake. I will tell you that was my mistake. I do remember scanning that roster. I was extremely disappointed in myself, and I brought it to Polly's attention and asked her how I could correct it. So I called up the Hennepin office and talked to them, and they made a note. We made a note. We got it to correct it. So he voted in the right district.
Thank you.
I have a two-part question as well. Please describe the auditor's treasurer's key duties regarding property taxes and list any experience you may have in tax calculation and collection process.
The only experience I have in that is helping on that one day when I did work in that office and collecting. I also did help balance the collections made at the bank. But I do know how to run the AS 400. I have looked at properties in that, and I know how to find what the taxes are and what taxes are due. Duties of that office, they're the deputy registrar for the county, so they're in charge of the license center. They they're in charge of the passports. They're in charge of parcel splits and parcel combination, like putting parcels together, combining. They are also in charge of the tax statements and truth and taxation notices. They work with the Secretary of State and the Department of Revenue when depending on Department of Revenue would be for reporting all the funds that we have received. They keep track of all the funds that Houston County takes in and all the funds that go out. And report that to the Department of Revenue, and for the in the voting end, they report to the Secretary of State. One thing they are in charge of like tax issues. So there's some places where it's like a TIF property where they have a special taxation rate because the state or the city, or I mean, city is trying to bring in business and they want these businesses to succeed. So they're allowing them a special tax break, if you would, to try and get more people to start their businesses.
Okay, thank you.
My two-part.
Everybody too far?
Most of the time. Okay, please describe the auditor treasurer's office role regarding land and parcel records and provide examples of experience you have in working with legal description.
Okay, so I know that in Holly and Mark's office, Mark ends up having, well, Mary Belbronson used to have to draw out parcels when they were split. Mary actually showed me that when I was in that office, and I had a lot of interest in GIS stuff, so that she wanted to show me since I was very interested in that. They have to read the legal and try to map it out. I have experience in that because I have to find legal descriptions for the Board of Adjustment and Planning Commission documents, the orders for conditional uses, variances, and rezone documents need to have an actual legal on them. And when I research that legal to make sure that it is correct, I will go into Beacon and put it into Kogo tools. I will type in the like 49 seconds or 3 minutes, whatever, and the distances, and I will have the program map the parcel in its own way. So it actually creates it by the words that I'm putting in there, the distances I'm putting in there, to ensure that I've got that incorrectly. I know that they work with land splits, they work with combining parcels. They're in charge of keeping track of who owns it, property transfers, any delinquent properties.
Ready?
Yep.
Okay, I got the next one here. So this is a two-part question. Can you describe your understanding of the auditor treasurer's statutory duties as related to the county board of commissioners?
The auditor treasurer is clerk of the county board. They're in charge of keeping track of the minutes. They are in charge of signing off on documents for the planning commission, as well as for any planning commission stuff that gets passed by the board of commissioners, they have to sign that document. They have to report to the board the financial statement. For the county. And
then there's the second part. What is your specific experience in reporting and or working with an elected public board?
I currently am the clerk of the Board of Adjustment and the Planning Commission. They handle variances, conditional uses, and interim uses, as well as rezone. My experience is I do all the I create all the documents that get recorded. I notice the variances or conditional uses in the paper at the proper time. I ensure that 10 property owners within that area closest to that parcel are notified. I notified the county board. I notified Sam Yant and Brian Pogodinsky, as well as Soil and Water, the DNR, all of those. I create the minutes for for the Planning Commission and Board of Adjustment. I create the agendas for the Planning Commission and Board of Adjustment. So that's kind of my
2 years you
experience.
were at that, probably?
Huh?
2 years you were working? with them?
I've been there for 2 years now. Yep.
You're up, right? Two-part question. Describe how you address an upset or irritated member of the public. Can you share an experience you may have had, an ultimate outcome of the interaction?
There's been a lot of those. I've had people call and be extremely frustrating with the process of getting a zoning permit. Last fall, there was a lady who called in. She was looking for a solar permit, and it had been 6 weeks since she called every single day. Every single week she had called in at least once. This person was frustrated that the process was not moving along. Our staff was all out that day, that the last time she called, and she was extremely frustrated. So she was not in a good mood. I talked to her and tried to explain to her the situation. I asked her if she had known that she needed to, what she needed to do. I took steps of explaining it to her. There was a piece that was missing that nobody had ever told her about, that she needed to apply for a change of use permit for an older existing dwelling that was no longer being used as a dwelling. Once I explained that to her, I was able to, she was confused. She thought it had to be a rezone or a variance or a conditional use, as she was explained to. And once I was able to explain to her that if she just made an application in our zoning permits for a change of use, she could move this along. And that's basically all she had to do. Within a week, the permit was issued, and she has called and thanked me many times, in different instances that I've been involved with her. So.
Thank you.
Yep.
Mine is, write an example of how you have positively influenced coworkers or direct reports that contributed to strengthening morale and service.
So there are times when things get a little stressful, and there have been times where people have been stretched thin and just worried about doing their job, and they feel like they're not performing well. If I see an opportunity, I will go to them and tell them that they are doing a great job, that they've always done their best work. They care about what they're doing. They have great work ethic, and they really shouldn't doubt themselves. I will try to encourage them in any way I can.
Thank you.
How do you approach differences or conflicts between individuals within your team?
So we do have some of that. I've, for the most part, tried to stay neutral. There's been some conflict in our office, and some things have been brought forward. But I try to overlook what's, like, if somebody's struggling in a certain portion of their duties, I try to help them and assist them in any way I can by trying to help them manage their time and prioritize. I also try to stay out of conversations that will spur it, but sometimes things do need to be brought to light, and I will always speak the truth. I am not gonna lie. I'm an honest, dependable person, and I can't not speak the truth.
Okay.
We're trying to write this down so we don't forget, you know, understand, so.
Okay. Please describe one of your most challenging or frustrating work-related experiences you have faced and what the outcome.
The comprehensive land use plan has been kind of a challenge in the last few weeks. A couple weeks ago, we were trying to figure out how this was supposed to go together. We had a day where nobody knew exactly how we were going to advertise it, what board was going to hear it, at what time, if we were gonna have to have a special meeting for the planning commission. And every 5 minutes, plan change. There were conversations with the county attorney and county staff and just trying to figure that all out. I was trying to write the notices for that. And I think I changed those notices like 15 times within that day. I answered questions and tried to assist wherever I could. I created the agenda and did what I could, but that day is pretty much a blur. It was extremely frustrating and I'm glad we're through that and we've got it all figured out. But I guess I just keep doing what I'm told and hoping that somebody will figure that out, being as I'm not in charge of that.
How do you decide what gets top priority when scheduling your time?
I love deadlines. I thrive on them. So if I see a deadline, it's on my radar. It doesn't fall off. I will make a calendar if I have to. I'll put a alarm in my phone. I love to meet the deadline. I am truly a deadline crushing, schedule keeping people pleaser, and I love to get things done. I thrive every time I succeed in something and get something through. I'm looking for the next thing. The things that I put on the back burner are projects that aren't applicable to today's timeline. Like if I have, say, an old zoning project where I'm scanning in 5,000 permits and trying to attach those to parcels, that can wait. If we've got hearing files to do, if I need to create or find legal and create a zoning document that's coming up in the next week or so, I'm usually way ahead of schedule on what I have for my job duties, and I like to keep it that way.
So, assuming you get the position, what do you anticipate will be the most challenging aspects of your job?
I love a challenge and there's going to be a ton to learn. So I think I'm going to have things flying at me from all different directions. I am thankful that I know a lot about the election stuff and I've worked in the township election process as well. But the thing that's probably going to be the biggest learning curve will be handling like taxes and stuff like that. I mean, just the calculation, the tax calc. And I am a fast learner. I grow exponentially when I'm challenged, and I really need a challenge right now. I would really appreciate it if you would consider me for this position.
Okay. I guess you have some questions of us. Are there areas of your experience or expertise you'd like to highlight in addition to any questions you may not cover to our questions?
I'd just like to say that I'm an honest person. I will always speak the truth to you, whether there's conflict or opposition to the truth. I will always tell you the honest truth. I'm not afraid to own up to my mistakes. I will be honest when I screw up. I'm going to come to you and I'm going to ask for advice. I appreciate knowing that I can come to people and seek out advice. I'd rather seek advice than find out later that I did it wrong. I'm self-disciplined. I have an investigative personality, so I'm going to search for errors I love figuring out when I can fix things. I have been in customer service for 19 years. I will always treat the public with the best care that I can. I want them to walk out of my office with a smile and be thankful that they have someone that can serve them and help them with their questions. I'm efficient. That's one of my greater qualities is I'm able to handle a lot of different things. And I promise I can learn this. I'm a farm kid, grew up on a farm. We dealt with all kinds of challenges. You wouldn't believe some of the crazy stuff we've done. So definitely have the ability to learn. I have forgot the rest of that question.
So it's a experience.
Yeah. And did you ask if I had questions before?
Yeah, questions about it.
So I was wondering if how it's gonna work with clerking. I know that currently the EDA isn't, or Allison does clerk board at this time. I was just wondering what the plan going forward with that is.
Well, for discussion. I guess.
Yeah, it's open for discussion and that'll be, it all depends on who the candidate is. And, it is part of the duties of the auditor, treasurer, and clerk of board, so. That'll be that.
But at the present time, I personally don't see any reason that it's gonna change as far as Allison keeping track of it. I mean,
We're in
that's what's
we're in a
ongoing.
contract with CETA on that. so.
Okay. Yeah.
See this other.
Yeah. How do you see this person taking on this role being trained? There's a lot to learn from a lot of different angles. I'm just wondering what the training process was.
Don't know. I don't know if,
There's resources with AMC
Okay.
to work on that. There's also, your fellow auditors in the county that help with training.
Yeah.
Donna would be a good resource.
Yeah.
Anybody that works for the county would be a good resource. So, I mean, that'd be, given what you just said, you'd be willing to ask
Yep, I will be asking questions.
and look into it. So
good question.
Another question I have is, will this continue to be an appointed position in the future, or what is your inkling on that? I know that it could change and it.
Well, right now it's an elected position.
Yeah.
On the term of the election. Has been some slight discussion about what the process would be, but that will be for some time.
Okay.
I think this term ends in 26. 5.
26.
26.
No. Yeah, 26.
Yeah, so I thought it was. So there's a couple of years of discussion, year and a half of discussion to see what the intent would be and so on.
Yeah, there'd be a process for that too. We'd have to have a public hearing. And do other procedures, but nothing's been discussed as far as making it appointed.
Okay. Okay,
Any other?
no, do you guys have any other questions of me?
So, I think we got a follow program here.
Okay, well, I want to thank you for this opportunity and I just hope that,
Thank you.
we'll be hearing from you soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Here I am again. For the record, can we get the name of the anonymous Houston County resident, please? Would you like to state your name?
Please,
I'm sorry.
They're gone.
Oh, they left. Okay, okay. I tried.
thank you.
It's your next candidate, Polly Haberling, and Polly, we thank you for applying for the position and taking time to speak with the board today. They have a series of questions they'll be asking you. I've also have a copy of those questions there for you, so you can go along with it. Leave that here. Okay, sounds good.
Make sure I read it the same with the questions is printed there, right?
Okay, you bet.
Very briefly summarize your work history that you believe has prepared you for the duties of Houston County Auditor Treasurer, include some certificates of training.
Okay, well, first I'd like to thank you guys for giving me the opportunity to even interview with you. I truly appreciate that. Summarizing my work history. I actually am certified with the state of Minnesota as an election administrator. I recently completed my tax calc certification with the Minnesota Department of Revenue. And by recently, I mean as of July 2nd. I decided to start studying for the exam. There is, by statute, one person in each county has to be certified in tax calc. So I thought I'm gonna give that a shot, study for the exam, take it. And actually, it's quite an accomplishment for me. I was able to pass it on my first try. I'm certified with the Minnesota Department of Revenue through 2028. So I've got the county covered that way, if nothing else. I have been working with the current auditor treasurer for the last 4 years, pretty much side by side. That has given me unbelievable experience, which would help with a seamless transition into the interim auditor treasurer position. I was a past business owner, meaning I have management experience that way. I did the hiring, accounts payable, accounts receivable. Was the team leader, was the motivator for the crew, and I loved every minute of it. Before that, I supervised up to 19 people at my time with Merchants Financial Group. I'm familiar with the programs that we use, our vendors, our applications, as computer systems go. With work history, I'm very familiar and proficient with Excel, Word, Outlook, SVRS, which is a state voting registration system, mirror imaging system, which is what we use to scan in tax payments and checks, post them electronically, and then deposit the checks electronically to the bank. And I'm capable of completing time-sensitive duties under pressure.
Could you just go through that, your certifications again, your tax, you just got the tax. calc,
Yep.
And then you got elections too.
Yep.
Okay.
So I am a certified election administrator with the
Okay.
state of Minnesota. I am now certified in tax calc in Minnesota. I have received my annual passport certificate that I can actually issue passports. I have my election judge training, my full pad training certificate. And I've also completed the annual revenue recapture testing. That just allows me to get into that system, and if and when we choose to use that to collect through state payments, I'd be able to do so.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, I start with the questions here. It's a two-parter. I'll give you both questions so you can interact them. Describe in detail your understanding of the auditor treasurer's election administration duty, both prior and post-election, and give us some experience with election.
Okay, prior to the election, there is an awful lot of setup involved. It starts with the notification to the state that the election will be held. From there, we begin to collect candidate information, order ballots, order media, look at our election judge material to see if we have to tweak it, update it. So bringing for those purposes. Test ballots, test the equipment. Ready the supplies for checkout on election day, run the proper reports for election day. And then, of course, on election day, we are on call from 7 o'clock in the morning until 10 or 11 or whenever all the precincts bring their information back to us. At that point, I would collect all the election results from all 27 precincts and upload those to the state. Make sure everything is showing at the state. They've got all of our results and we show 100% completed. After the election, we would then get ready for the canvas board meeting so that we could certify our election results. And at that point, we would then choose the 2 precincts that would be part of the peer review, meaning they would be randomly selected to come in and hand count their ballots. And it's just kind of a proof, a review showing that our election equipment was accurate. And it proves to the public or anyone else who wants to come in and view that process that Houston County knows what they're doing when it comes to elections. And providing experience with the elections. I have been involved for the last 4 years, but 3 years with more experience with every piece of the puzzle that I just explained.
Okay, my turn. 2-part question. Please describe the auditor treasurer's key duties regarding property taxes.
Okay, well, not only do we collect payments, the property tax payments, but the steps ahead of that would involve collecting levy information, doing the tax calc, finding out homestead credits, classifications. There's a lot of steps involved with that. And then again, the settlement portion of that as well is a huge deal. I've kind of been watching in on settlement process and have helped recently with that too. And it's a very fun process. I like working with numbers, spreadsheets, seeing in the end after all those calculations where you actually come out to where you're supposed to come out. So
that was basically, the second part was list the experiences you may have tax calc.
and collection processes.
You kind of gave it.
Yep. So with the settlement, I was a part of it this last time now in calculating, going through, pulling out special assessment fees, the taxes collected, current, delinquent, mobile home, getting them in the right columns on the spreadsheets. As far as working with the collection process in the treasurer's office, I do help out at the front desk during the tax collection season, the busy season. I take the payments. I'm actually the main one to scan those the tax payment tickets and the checks through the scanning system, post them electronically, and then deposit all of those checks for those tax deposits. Many deposits a day, those busy days. I just kind of follow through with that. And at the end of the night, then, of course, we make sure that we balance with the IFS system and the checks that came in, and checks and balances all the way through that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Just a second. My 2-parter.
Mm-hmm.
Please describe the auditor treasurer's office's role regarding land parcel records and provide examples of experience you have in working with legal descriptions.
Okay. The auditor treasurer's office is a big part of the land transfers, the land records. As the documents come in to our office, we are the ones responsible for, number one, making sure that the names attached to these parcels are accurate in the new deeds or affidavits or whatever type of document comes in our way. So there's many steps to that. That's number one, making sure we have the right people involved with this land transfer. We check out to make sure the proper deed tax is collected, mortgage tax. We then go ahead, create a deed log for tracking purposes within the courthouse here. That kind of just bumps on to the next department once we do our part. It logs our section, range, township codes. We follow through with the legal description, meaning if it's a very complicated one, we'd have to go into GIS or Beacon and actually draw that parcel out to make sure that it is accurate, because you don't want to transfer different parts or pieces of land that don't belong to the proper people. It's a lot of detailed work. Once it is done, we kind of, in a sense, sign off, and it goes to the treasurer's office. And they do their part before it goes back to the recorder's office to finish up the actual recording process. Examples of experience working with legal descriptions, I have done that quite a bit. Mark is our lead with this right now, but I am the backup. So anytime he is gone, sick, vacation, whatever it may be, I have to step in and do exactly that.
All right, I got the next one, which is also a two-part. The first part is describe your understanding of the treasurer auditor's statutory duties as related to the County Board of Commissioners. And then it goes on to what is your specific experience in reporting and or working with the elected public board?
The auditor treasurer's, one of their main duties would be to actually act as the clerk to the board. So all of the findings, the reports, the resolutions, meeting notes, they are in charge of making sure they get stored in a safe place, making sure they're all current and accounted for. Same way with warrants, making sure that claim forms are signed and they're signed by the board as well to keep the process up to speed and just current all the way through. Experience in reporting to or working with an elected public board. I have stepped in and taken notes for some of the board meetings before, listened in on different board meetings, and just feel I have a pretty good feel for what the Board of Commissioners does. Knowing that you guys, you have a very difficult job as far as I'm concerned. You have to make some difficult decisions. We need all to work together and make sure our information is stored where it should be and that we're all covered that way.
Thank you for those kind words.
It truly is.
My turn. Here we go. Okay. Mine's a two-parter. Describe how you're addressed an upset or irritated member of the public. And can you share an experience you may have had and an ultimate outcome of the interaction?
The first thing that comes to mind is we did have an upset resident of Houston County come into the courthouse one day and they were upset because they felt that there were some election security issues that they wanted addressed. So I was called into an impromptu meeting. I'm kind of put on the spot a bit, but I had to share my piece of the puzzle when it came to that. So I did my part, as did the other county employees there. We all kind of said how we fit into this puzzle. The resident didn't necessarily feel comfortable with our answers, even though we said we have been certified with the state of Minnesota, this equipment is safe. We knew we were fine. There was just a doubt in this resident's mind. As that person left that day, it wasn't totally resolved, but it was kind of like we agree to disagree to a certain extent. There was some resolution though, a bit later on. It was when we were holding our peer review, which is the post-election review. And that is where we have 2 precincts that are drawn come in and they have to hand count their ballots to make sure that their hand counts match the totals on their tabulator they used election night. This resident did come to that peer review as a public, someone who just wanted to watch the process. And saw firsthand that by hand counting, everything matched exactly the way it should have. Our equipment is working. It was proved to the precincts. It was proved to the public who came to watch. So we had a bit of, we had some resolution there with him knowing that our equipment is accurate.
Next one is for me, it'd be provide an example how you would have positively influenced coworkers or direct reports and contributing to the strengthening of morale and service.
As far as positively influencing coworkers, I believe that life is too short to be unhappy. So I like to think of myself as an upbeat person. I believe in teamwork, camaraderie, and trust between coworkers. When you have that team atmosphere, I truly believe people are working at their best. They want to learn, they want to grow, they want to improve. So strengthening morale and being a team leader, a team player is one of the most important things I have learned through my whole career.
Thank you.
Mhm.
How do you approach differences or conflicts between individuals within your team? That never happens.
Never. Not very often, that's for sure. I would stay calm and just listen to both sides. There's 2 sides to every story. Talk to them in private first. Just kind of get a background on what might be going on. And perhaps eventually, if the 3 of us felt comfortable getting together to see what we can come up with to amicably solve the issue, move forward and put that behind us and make sure we're all on the same page going forward.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Please describe one of your most challenging or frustrating work-related experiences you have faced in the outcome.
I don't know if it's the most challenging or frustrating, but it was challenging and frustrating within the last year, probably. I felt that there was a teammate that was I took it as talking behind someone else's back. I don't do that. I don't feel comfortable doing that. I never do it, but I don't feel comfortable hearing others do it as well. I did just kind of confront that person saying, is there a reason why, what's going on? Why is this being done? And I found out, because we took the time to visit about it, that I was taking it wrong. That isn't the way that this person meant it to come across. They didn't realize it sounded like that. So just by talking through it, we got through that frustration. I was a bit upset because I thought, too, this isn't the way this is supposed to be. That's not a true team atmosphere, and we need to be on the same page to get things done.
Next one would be, how do you decide what gets top priority when scheduling your time?
Just prioritize deadlines, how long each project might take, if I have a good idea of that. I try to do, it's not a true to-do list each day, but when I get to work, it's just kind of like, okay, this is what I know I have to get done today. So when that list is made, you just kind of review it and go from there. It's what time, or is there a meeting coming up someone needs the information for? Just kind of wing it each day that way by deadline.
Okay, assuming you get the position, what do you anticipate will be the most challenging aspect of the job?
At this point, I believe that doing settlement for the first time would be challenging, the most challenging for me. There is the Minnesota Department of Revenue has a calendar kind of that walks you, keeps you on tasks. It has the deadlines, and so you kind of have an idea. But what it doesn't necessarily tell me is how long it will take me that first time to complete that settlement. So it'll be a challenge, an exciting challenge, but yeah. One thing I would do to be proactive would be to create my own timeline while doing it the first time. Again, I know what to look for and just give me a better idea for the next time around.
Well, we got the printed questions now. It's time. Do you have any questions on this or areas of expertise and experience that you wish to highlight in addition to the questions you have?
Well, I have one question. It's a super easy one though, so no need to get excited. But with this last certification on tax calc that I did just complete, again, to me, that's a really big thing. I put a lot of time into that. That's studying and passing that exam. Could I hand out the confirmation showing that I did in fact complete that? You could put it with the other certifications that I did include in my resume, if that's okay. Sure. Awesome. Okay. So other than that, just thank you so much for your time. I truly, truly appreciate it. I will give you each one of these.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you, Julie. Appreciate it. There.
Thank you. Congratulations on my buff.
That's great.
We had to take a break. Oh. I could use one too, but I can wait.
Why don't you go ahead and have a seat there? Patient today. The commissioners will each have some questions for you. I'm gonna do it round robin, each one can ask follow-up questions. As we get started, I will provide you a copy of the questions here. Please leave so that you can refer to them. If you need to, and I'll just ask that you read those with me. Writing hand getting tired?
Not bad.
Did a little preliminary housekeeping, so to speak. Getting us started, so I will turn the floor over to Dewey, who's the board chair.
Good afternoon. Yeah, well, questions here and comments, so first of all, very briefly summarize the work history that you believe has prepared you for the duties of Houston County Auditor Treasurer, including any certificates or training that you have.
Okay. Yeah, I've worked in the auditor treasurer's office since November, so my primary responsibilities are the property transfers and receiving in all the money for the county from the sheriffs. Human services, all the different departments. And making sure that they're all correct. In my previous work experience, I've been with Walmart. I was management there for 15 years. I did a lot of different things. I was in charge of all the employees. I over the front end, so I did some of the cash register things, which kind of relate to the treasurer's position. Verifying all the that are balanced each day, going through all the reports, any discrepancies, looking into that.
Yeah. First question that I'm here, it's a two-parter. Okay, be both questions, because they kind of intermingle, I guess. First of all, describe in detail your understanding of the auditor treasurer's election administration duties, both prior to and post the election, and then provide any experience you have with elections.
The only experience I have with the elections is the township election that was this spring. I just helped with the absentee ballots and voter registration, things like that with the SVRS. I haven't really been granted access to a lot of that. I think they were kind of position that they hired for before I really dove into the election stuff more. So, but really that's mainly been Polly and they're the ones that have dealt with that. Definitely willing to learn, and I understand it'd be a big part of this position. I get that. I know that there'd be training, but In this position, I think I'd have to lean on the people that know that stuff best. Just kind of oversee it and manage it until I become comfortable with it myself.
Okay, I got a two-part question. Please describe the auditor treasurer's key duties regarding property taxes and list any experience you may have in tax calc and collection processes.
I haven't done the tax calc. That's usually just been done, but the collection, yeah, the customers or the taxpayers come in a lot or they mail them in. I help them process those and get them their receipts. Make sure all the information is correct in the tax system, because that's a big part, making sure it goes to the right house or that they're getting charged the right amount based on their acreage. That's a lot of what I do. Making sure that the parcels are in the right person's name and that they're drawn out correctly so that they're getting charged the right amount for the taxes and stuff.
Okay, just. Another two-parter. Please describe the auditor treasurer's office's role regarding land parcel records and provide examples of experience you have in working with legal descriptions.
Yeah, that's mainly what I do. That's what I'm set for. So, yeah, the land and parcel records, there you get the warranty deeds or the different kind of deeds from the attorneys, and my job's to verify everything is correct with those legal descriptions. Some of them are really complex, some are pages and pages, so you got to make sure that there's not a single incorrect discrepancy in there, otherwise it could result in the wrong amount of property and they could be charged the wrong amount for taxes and stuff too. I do, yeah, once I go through and verify everything's correct, then they check the ECRB, which is online, which is an electronic certificate of real estate, and verify that all that information is correct as well. Because once it's recorded forever. So I've had a lot of times where I got to talk to the attorneys and whoever drafted up the title work and stuff to make sure that it's all accurate. So it doesn't have to, or it could cause problems in the future too, because if they go to sell it again and it's incorrect, then it just stops a lot of problems from happening altogether if you didn't catch it right away. Legal descriptions, yeah, I learned that from when I started here, but I caught on pretty quickly. And dealt a lot with Eric too and Tammy and the assessor or the surveyor's office. And those guys are really helpful. If there's any weird, I've learned a lot from them. Dealt a lot with splitting and combining parcels too. People have little chunks that they want to add together. Then I walk them through that process, and there's forms and everything that they need to fill out and update the tax system and the cards and all that, all the information.
The next one I got here, it's a two-part as well.
Okay.
Describe your understanding of the auditor treasurer's statutory duties as related to the County Board of Commissioners. And what is your specific experience in reporting to and or working with an elected public board?
I guess this would be the first time for me in this kind of role. I don't do a lot with the statutory stuff. I do submit some things, for the agenda, like the one that was on there today from the gambling one. So a lot of people will come in, request certain licenses or the liquor licenses, and that has to get submitted to you guys for approval. And then I know a lot of the checks too, you verify those that they're correct on the auditor's list. Yeah, really haven't had a lot of interaction, I guess, as far as
This got two-parter for you. Describe how an address or an upset or irritated member of the public. Can you share an experience where you may have had an ultimate outcome of that interaction?
Yeah, and some people come in, I've had just recently come in about their property taxes. It's not usually a fun experience for people to pay property taxes, and some people would be upset because I know one person had at one point he had 2 homesteads on his property, and he was mad because he tore the one down a couple of years ago and he was still being taxed for it. And I just try to be empathetic and understand, why he's upset, and try to explain to him probably what happened, and then we could get it fixed. And I went up to him, to the assessor's office with him, just explained what was going on. We were able to find out that it was just incorrect, and get it fixed and get the amount that he owed corrected. But yeah, I've had a lot of experience with irritated customers at Walmart over the years, as you can imagine. Yeah, it's I could talk all day about that.
Went to the school of hard knocks on that.
Yeah. You get classy.
It's back to me. Provide an example of how you have positively influenced coworkers or direct reports and contributed to strengthening morale and service.
Well, with Walmart being a manager, there's a lot of, recognizing people's strengths and pushing them to succeed. I really enjoyed training people so that they could get promoted and take new positions and stuff like that. It was something that I really liked, watching people grow and mentoring people. I had a lot of different department managers under me that have got promoted to, salary managers, things like that. Really made a difference in their lives, and I really liked that part of the job, seeing them grow. A lot of employees I had.
How do you approach differences or conflicts between individuals within your team?
I try not to take sides right away, try to get all the information, and it happens in every job, as on Walmart or here, even, the employees don't disagree on things, so try to be a mediator, find out, get all the facts really before what's going on. I like to tell, when you're telling people to do something or anything like that, you want them to know the reason why. Makes it a little bit easier to take. I guess that's the overall way of handling it. Yeah.
My question. Please describe one of your most challenging or frustrating work-related experiences that you have faced and the outcome.
Yeah, I guess go back to Walmart. One of the biggest, I was in charge of call it the annual event. It's Black Friday. Over in Alaska, it was at that store. It was big. There's 250 employees that work there, and all of them had to be assigned specific jobs and duties on that day to get it ready and make sure everything ran smoothly. So that was my job, to oversee that. So obviously I couldn't do it all myself. So I was able to created a lot of different teams and different leaders within those teams where I meet with those leaders and they could cascade out the information to the other employees. But it was a lot of work. There's a lot of specific directions that we had to follow for the company. It's a little, it's frustrating, but it was more challenging than anything. But it's fun to see it all come together. Glad I don't have to do it anymore, but it's a lot of work for one day. A lot of, $1 million worth of merchandise one day. It's a big deal. Waffle makers and stuff you'll never use.
How would you decide what gets top priority when scheduling your time?
Well, I guess you gotta look at time restrictions, due dates. Obviously. I could have two things on the same due date, but. Just have to look at the most important one, how long everything's gonna take to get done first. I guess in my current role, I do all the documents because they've got up to 3 days to get them done, but so I always just do all of those first and I can receipt in money the next day, even if I need to. So I do the ones that are time sensitive first. Just get them out of the way and then work on other projects as time along.
Whom you're given this position, what do you anticipate will be the most challenging aspect of the job?
Well, it's a lot of information to learn, especially about the elections, because I haven't done it yet. I've had the opportunity. Not afraid of it, I just know that it would be a lot of work, and a lot of hours, which I would totally anticipate and be fine with. Yeah, I would say just because I haven't done it before, I'd be more comfortable with the treasurer duties because I do a lot of them already. But the election is just something that I haven't done, but I know that I'd be able to lean on Polly and Ella because they've done it. They're great at it. Just have to be very resourceful.
Okay, good. Well, I guess like we answered the question, went through the question list. Do you have any questions or if there are areas of your experience and expertise that you wish to highlight? You may not have covered, or any, again, questions if you have one.
I don't think I really have any questions. I mean, I just want to say that I'm looking for a long-term career, not just the next 3 years, something that could go well into the future possibly. So I would take that very serious. I just believe that with my management skills, that I'd be able to manage all three of the departments the most efficiently. I know I'm up against some really qualified candidates, I get that. But I think with my management skills, I'd be able to utilize everybody's skills to the best. Put them in the best places. Yeah, I guess that's it.
Okay, I guess that's what we got. We want to thank you for taking the time to come to visit with us today and you live more right.
All right.
Thank you, Mark.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Commissioners, do you have any questions for me or?
Do you want these? Right away,
Well, I think if you, considering the time and the time you've already committed, if you want to, either drop them off or arrange for them to be dropped off at my office, or I can pick them up maybe at your location, whatever's most convenient between now and tomorrow afternoon sometime.
Get back within 24 hours.
Well,
Or something like that.
Thursday afternoon, because I just want to provide you with summary on Tuesday.
I'm comfortable turning mine in now.
So whatever your preference is.
Thank you, very well organized.
So what are your thoughts that way?
Well, yeah, I'm gonna. But for a minute, yeah, I'll have mine done probably with that. You get, stay in town, something else. Just, every year later, Bob lives in town, we just, we say by Thursday noon at the latest, so.
That works for me.
Gives you time to get it.
Yep.
Right, it's next week. Say for those,
That's fine.
work with that then.
Okay. If you have any questions, feel free to call.
Okay,
Give me a call.
thank you. I guess we'll get back into finishing up our meeting. Finished all of the action items, basically updates. Not much going on. I think I'll have Bob talk about our meeting with the sheriff and his last couple, about 10 days ago. I have a Zoom meeting tonight with Southeast Minnesota Emergency Services. We have a retirement and highlight their just finding a replacement for their show. Other than that, that's all I have. Thank you, Eric.
No, not really. I just had a constituent call me about County 20. Wants to look into possible repaving or paving it and fixing it up. But had a brief discussion with Brian on that. And we're gonna look into that for the future, but it's gonna take some money.
Is that the area you talked about, the gravel and the black gravel? If I'm getting 20 in my mind. Is that the one for 76?
Yep.
And you have partially,
Probably off at 76 a little bit, but not much.
okay.
Yeah. It's a road that's in a wet area, so that's where the issues are. It's a lot of wet ground surrounding it. And springtime, it breaks up quite a bit. So I told Mr. Olson in the email that I would have some conversation, and when I learn more, I'll get back to him. So another thing too, I've been talking to Lisa Dirks, Allison, about possible meeting. She wants to come, and
Yes, she called me, we connected, and we're gonna set up a time for her to come. Yep.
50 from extension. Their budget request, so. Other than that. Can't think of anything right off the top of my head. Had our land use meeting this morning, went through a lot of stuff. Luke and Donna had some discussion on mobile homes, is quite a fiasco, and try to keep track of that. And what everyone's role in that, but they had a good discussion. Looks like they found a way to work it out, so. Martin brought up about La Crescent possibly annexing the
Empty lots.
yep, some lots there in La Crescent.
Is that the ones across from the golf course or something?
No, that's up on the hill.
Crescent Hills. Yeah. He went to the city council meeting.
Yep, we were there last.
They're gonna pursue that.
They're gonna look into it, but he reminded me and them that they're gonna have trouble with getting septic up there because it's the grade and it's hard rock. There's used to be a quarry there. I mean, what's underneath it? Quarry. I don't know. I represent the area, but sometimes I'm not always on board. Okay.
He mentioned.
Nothing more.
That's all I got.
I had the email from Mr. Olson as well and talked to Brian about it. Seems that in order to really do a good job, the cost is pretty prohibitive as far as the thought to do it.
$1 million a mile.
Yeah, and then the part that they're talking about, I think more so than anything, is from Highway 44 back to St. Malay Road, where that vast majority of the residents live across along the bottom of 20. Where you come, the blacktop comes up when you go straight off the 76, when you're coming 16,
Oh, I mean, 40.
when you're coming 20, when you're coming 76, and 20 goes straight.
Mhm.
Up on top of the ridge, it's surface. Until you come down around the corner, then the hill,
Down in the hill.
the hill itself is rock. And when you get down to Malay Road, that's where the residences in Bob County lives down in Mosgate. There's a lot of residents along there. Trying to get out to 44. I think that's the section the residents are most interested in, but that's also the section that's the softest because of the, like you said, the spongy ground and the swampy ground and whatnot. So to do it would be very expensive. And very restrictive on our budget as it stands. We'd have to get some
We'd have to get
federal money.
We'd have to get some grants, infrastructure grants or something to help do something like that, so.
Got a lot of wet spots you're gonna deal with down in there.
Oh, yeah. So it would be expensive to do. I understand why they want it, but it's always been gravel, so. Anyway. Got a letter from Semcac thanking us for the additional donation towards the county food shelf. We appreciated that. They're having difficulty with regard to getting certain food items, protein items and whatnot, because their sources are running out of it as well. So they appreciate the money and trying to make things come together and fit. I had one question from a constituent with regard to my position on the Second Amendment. I don't know if anybody else has been talking to anybody with regard to that. And
I got one too.
Second Amendment and the county becoming a sanctuary county. So I told him my opinion, so. His response was, he knows who he's not gonna vote for. Next time goes in election. I just had to bring it up. And then I made my application to be on that volunteer application for the infrastructure resilience. And the Community Services Committee met this morning. And Veteran Services, the traveling memorial wall will be down at Houston Hoedown for a week. When Hoedown comes at the end of July. And they're looking for volunteers. There's got to be somebody with the wall at all times. So they're looking for volunteers. Don't have to be a vet. They're looking for volunteers to keep an eye on it while it's up down there. The van has been going to all the parades, and they've got the two left, the one in Houston and the one in McCrescent. That's very well received. The 4-H and the VSO is looking to expand their personnel issues down there. I think they're going to talk to personnel about that as far as the amount of time. This first year, and the reasons for that is because the volume of work that they're doing with the halftime. And when he first came here, he had 420 clients. Now he's got 1,100. And it's hard to keep up, especially with all the legislative changes and whatnot that the VA has, that the feds and the state have come with, as well as, some of those changes affecting widows and whatnot. So there's a lot more work that's being done. And then John was there and reported as far as public health and human services, but we talked about all of that today in our meeting between child care, dental access, and the TZD group. So I don't have to report on any of that. So I don't have anything else to report.
Land use, I had that meeting this morning with Greg. He kind of touched base there on it. Crescent Hills, I kind of got a little heat from the township board on that here the last little bit too, because again, they're frustrated about the lack of things that they can do to preserve it when people are not getting the availability to build because they're working under basically two different sets of rules. So where the city may let them build on some of them lots, but not on all of them, versus the county won't let them build anything. So that is evidently why they are petitioning the the city to go that route, so. It's, I know Martin's hands are a little bit tied, and he volunteered when I talked to him yesterday to see what was going on, because he said that was the first he heard of it, was when I called and told him it was on the agenda. So they are a little frustrated that way. And whatever we can do to help them preserve the township, I don't know.
Is the city less restrictive than the county as far as what you can do on a?
That's what I
Parcel.
questioned, and Martin basically told me that as long as it fits the Minnesota building code. And it sounds like some of our areas is a little bit more restrictive on the county. But the city can circumvent that.
It can't be less restrictive.
That's what I always thought.
Well, there's a system that I visited briefly with our on it. It's called a type 4 system, whatever. That might work up to about, you know, they don't have any site plans or any ideas on how they're gonna do the septic. I think that's been the
It's
biggest
very
issue.
expensive, and we'd have to get outside consultants on that.
Right. Cause it almost seems like the steps to do it in the city would be easier than the steps to do it in the county. So if they don't like plan A, they're gonna go to plan B, which is go to the city. It's kind of what I'm hearing.
So the thing too is that owners initiated, it's not.
Right, it's not the city, it's the owners,
There's
not like in the
3 lots in a
Amsterdam.
row. Again, you know, I don't totally agree with what they're doing, but
Well, they can initiate it, but they don't have to accept it.
Yeah. I don't know if it's gonna go through, to be honest with you, because it's so many hurdles that they may not be aware of until we start digging into it. I think, but it would, change things up there, because it's very narrow lots, and, they'd have to have a very small house to get their septic in there, or, you know, that setback.
Or own multiple lots, which some of them do. Yeah, some of them do own multiple. So anyways, so that's out there. We did meet with the Sheriff Sweatberg, Dewey and I did, he wanted to get together. He had the jail administrator there and his Mark Wilson, emergency management, and Chief Deputy Hargrove. They kind of went over a little bit of the woes with the jail, with the contract and staffing issues, which we were somewhat aware of. They're having a hard time even finding applicants and filling, and I think that's part of why their temporary patch was trying at least get the shifts covered to save overtime with what they just proposed. But Brian did want us to be aware of that. He thinks that the wave of all of the other sheriff's offices in the state, and he's going to get us an exact number, hopefully at our work session, of ones that have split jail dispatch and what cost differences are there. But it sounds like, you know, from what he initially told us, that we really are 4 or 5 counties that have the combined, just about everyone else is split. Again, that's a little.
What do you mean split?
Where they have.
Solely dispatch and solely jailer.
Correct, and that's something that we may have to look at, or he's gonna crunch some ideas and bring some facts forward to us.
What they did is, what happens is some people will come in and say, well, I can dispatch, I'm not gonna do anything with that back there. And then others will say, well, I'll do a jailer part, but I'm not gonna dispatch because of the technology.
Well, it's
So it'd be easier to get more people perhaps.
And retain more people.
Retain.
But the way it's set up down there in that office, that you're kind of looking at the whole thing here, aren't you?
They still are separate duties.
Yeah.
They're still, when they're in jail, and they're jail, when they're
So I
dispatched.
think their duties would be separate.
So that's something that he's gonna be looking into, just to let us know. Don't know if he's gonna propose it or not, but it's something he's gonna bring. Talking about with the jail, they've only been running an average of about 4 inmates of our own. So again, once that Winona contract is up, it's gonna be pretty drastic. So they have been doing some other research, and there is a possibility of looking into a federal inmate contract. So he's gonna look into that a little bit and see if it's something that we would be interested in applying for or trying to work for with no guarantee that they would get in it, but he was gonna hopefully have information on that at our work group session.
Like Fillmore does. State, yeah, it's.
Yeah, some of them do state. I forget where he said, I think it was up in the Twin Cities was the nearest federal one at this point, and he was gonna find out for sure what they entailed, whether they
Interesting
were
which ones you can pick.
white collar, blue collar.
Well, a lot of them were pre-sentenced inmates too before their sentence. It's kind of like
Holding facilities.
just holding in between.
Otherwise, like Brian's said, that they'd have to look at budgetary, whether maybe even long-term, if they would end up keeping our jail open or us contracting elsewhere. There's a pretty big,
When you only got 4 or 5 inmates average.
so he said there's some pretty important things we may need to study. So they're looking forward in this, on all those different areas. So
It's good.
so they're gonna be crunching some numbers,
Did he-
get back to us.
did they talk about. When you talk about dispatchers. I've read different things. We could share a dispatcher either, you know. We cover Fillmore County or they cover Houston County with the dispatcher.
He didn't get into that
Dispatching costs.
detail, but there's pros and cons and hurdles there that I'll let them.
It's like the 811 deal. There's only a few dispatchers in the state that cover the whole state. For those,
The 911 is 2 dispatch centers.
but I mean, there's 811 also that,
Oh, that
that. People with mental issues. Whatnot. And you call in for that. There's only a few dispatch centers and they cover the whole states. Just ask. Please.
Have to refer that to them for their area, but so anyways, that's coming, hopefully, some more information to us and options to look at. The 25th meeting, I'll have to zoom in on. It will not be in the state that day, so.
Can we come
taking out the
with
new
you?
Trans Am.
They got room for it.
No, I have a family commitment.
Trans Am trip, huh? Greg,
Oh, well, we had an airport meeting, me and Bob did on what day was that, 6th? We didn't learn a heck of a lot. We're still not struggling with the FAA on some trees. I don't know how that's all gonna work out. You wanna add something to that?
Brian set up the meeting with FAA. For one aspect, as far as the airport runway. There's too many divisions. Because the one group says, well, as long as the trees are under 150 feet. The next group has the 20, 25, 20, 30, 35 foot elevation. So the one group says, okay, the next group says no, and then there's another group. I think it's pretty well squared away that if we can arrange to get the trees taken down in the area we want to lease. As well as the trees on the north end of the property. Say from the driveway north, the taller trees taken out of there. We might be able to resolve this. If that means that we have to put in some trees for a windbreak or something along that north line. To make the owner happy. But otherwise. There's so many different. Divisions and options and angles. It's
Layers of wear.
That's
I don't think we've gotten the same answer on anything, but a different answer on every time we do something.
Then we get this resolved, there'll be a new administration and it'll all change.
Yep, they do. And I guess we had a personnel meeting and a lot of that you guys did today. That's all I got.
okay, just also on Thursday, Parks Committee. Wildcat, Corps of Engineers are coming to town to discuss some of our thoughts and ideas, so. We'll see how that goes. At 1 or 1:30, I got it in my book. 1 o'clock, I think it is. That's.
One last question. With regard to this Board of Adjustment meeting coming up. You know, because they're a quasi judicial body on their own right. And make a decision. Because we don't, as commissioners, apparently have any input as far as that's concerned. That's something that we would have. See, Martin is kind of taking care of the process. Like Sam or something come and say, you know, just because a mistake was made here doesn't mean we should make the same mistake.
Well, he's our county attorney and think he should have a say and a responsibility to,
At least present the case to the Board of Adjustment before they make.
well, to make sure that it's explained correctly.
Yeah,
And there are some things that just shouldn't even be brought before a board if they are not allowed.
Well, I mean, especially when it
begin
goes against your ordinances and your comprehensive land use plan, so.
if Jay Squire said that this is what we're supposed to do, we should. Just because we have it
But
come before the board.
was that explained to Jay Squires correctly, what the situation was?
But
When is that?
I'm gonna go ask Sam if he can go to that.
No, 27th, I think it is Thursday.
This 27?
Yeah, I think it is the 27th.
Thursday, right?
So it's after our board meeting, right? Yeah, it's a Thursday night, right?
Mhm.
We have planning commission the same night. But if this thing is telling me a repeated mistake all the time, why can't we change that? So this thing kind of happen. Should be a way to go about it.
I mean, we've spent a long time working on this comprehensive land use plan, so now we need to follow it. And that particular proposal does not follow the current plan or the one to be adopted. So sometimes we have to say no because things unfortunately don't work with our ordinances. And if we made a mistake in the past, that is bad, but two wrongs don't make a right. And so we need to deal with it properly now.
Also, there's rules get changed or whatever.
No, there's no rule change here. There's only one residence on a quarter. One dwelling, so.
Is this the one out in Jefferson Ridge you're talking about?
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean. He shouldn't be able to get a house he should not be able to build a house here unless he buys 7 more acres to make it.
Well,
40.
no, basically, he could build in the back on that quarter. He's got land that he could build.
Okay, I didn't know that. See, he didn't tell us that. Well, he wasn't here. So.
Well, you haven't had the hearing yet. I'm just,
We just need to get the information.
but he could build it in the way in the back there. I mean, that's the way that parcel's carved out is that they gave him a little strip there for access. Well, he wants to build in that strip when he should be building back here in that 40. So
When there is no house.
there's no house on it and it'll be a hell of a driveway. That's the big factor there, but.
Well, there is the 40 in front of that Gerald Trader wants to build a house. You know that?
But that would be
That
prohibited too because it's quarter.
He has his 40. So and this guy's got 33 right next to him. And well, that night they didn't know if they
Well,
wanted to
no,
build.
you're talking about a different deal. Yeah, you're talking about, this is the Sealy deal. You're talking about that other situation,
Yeah.
that big table.
Yeah.
Right, yeah, that's different. Yeah.
Okay.
All right, well, maybe
Sounds like you're.
mention.
Oh, I should mention that I got this at land use plan. Everybody get one? Yeah.
Right here.
That's, Sheila always puts that together, I believe, along with Brian, and it's a very good report. Very detailed, it's kind of handy to look at.
You got it today. It took a long time to read 120 pages of information for a BOC.
That's got a new picture of our shop.
Yeah, no flag.
No flag.
Anything else for the good of the cause?
Someday we've got to talk about the shop. With regard to that.
Public comment? Okay,
We should have
nothing on the screen.
stuff.
Okay, no public comment.
Yeah.
Entertain a motion.
Chance, you got something to say?
So what's your name?
You sat through it all.
What is your name? What is? Francie. It's me, I'm Greg. Mayer. Francie volunteers at Semcac too. Okay.
Very good.
How's that going? She knows the food situation.
I would make the motion to adjourn.
Yeah, I got one over there. I got a second. Who's the second? Yep. All in favor, say aye.
Aye, we're done. Thank you, guys.